24th, 2024. Please call the roll.
Mr. Knoll? Ms. Zajac?
Here.
Ms. Weltman?
Here.
Ms. Godin?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Here.
Dr. Wong?
Here.
Thank you. And I'm very happy to tell council Mr. Knoll believes that he will be able to return for our next meeting.
Good to hear.
That is great news.
Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We have a long agenda, so we're going to get right to it. The first item is a presentation of the Gates Mills Boulevard Park design by MKSK and an ensuing Pepper Pike discussion. Now that I told you not to be in here, you need to come in. Right there,
In the hot seat.
in the hot seat. We need to get you tied in, I guess, quickly. Jim, if you could assist with that, I appreciate it. All right, council, if you recall, we had invited MKSK to come back when it's basically its first, more comprehensive first iteration of the plan that they were proposing and was ready for presentation. Susie, welcome back.
Thank you.
And the floor is yours. You know what, Emmy, could you hit the lights?
Sure. Or thank you.
Or
Is that the red
particularly
one?
Bob, those? Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having us again to share this presentation with you. Again, my name is Susie Maurer, landscape architect at MKSK. This is Cullen Hayes, also a landscape architect at our office. She's the principal of our office. So we will begin.
All right. So you can see up on the screen, and we'll zoom into each of these areas because we realize this is a district. But this is the entire length of the multi-use trail from the Brainerd Circle to Lander Circle. And what we're highlighting here are some of the moments, some of the unique elements that we're looking to create along this pathway. So as well as being a nice rolling and multi-use path down the center of the median, it also has moments of differentiation, of variety, and things to look forward to along your way. And so as we were looking at concepts, looking at design precedents, what really struck us was the design elements and the flow and feel of the design of Brainerd and the park-like setting that's there. Specifically looking at some of the wall structures and some of the native planting, and wanting to tie that in and make this entire multi-use path feel like it's all part of one system, as well as bringing in some, like I said, moments of interest, moments of intrigue throughout your travel as you're going down the path. And so we're going to work our way down from Brainerd to Lander and just look at some studies and plan and in perspective. And you'll see along the bottom of the presentation, it's just a key plan, simple key plan to show you where we're at. So we're starting here at a gateway moment for the path. So one of the things that we noticed that's so successful about Brainerd Circle and the design of that is the use of undulation and the use of those sandstone stacked walls that are really creating visual variety. They create differentiation and different vantage points as you move along. It's essentially just a circular area in an enclosed space. So it really gives you a feeling of meandering through a park, and you're trying to mimic that same style as we move down the median here. So we started here at this gateway. I'm going to go to the next view. So using that same ledge stone as a moment of welcoming, as bringing you into this first gateway feature, we're also looking at creating a kind of pop moment with the plantings. So really having some nice gateway plantings here that blend well with the kind of muted palette that we're looking at for the majority of the median. So really looking at opportunities to incorporate no-mow grass, which is a kind of long stem grass that creates movement and texture, but isn't very high maintenance. And then also pairing that with some meadow plantings and using that as the majority of the palette. But as you see here at the entrances, really trying to create these moments of beauty and color right when you come into the space.
Can you go back a slide? I want to see the access to that moment. Just so one more. So you're going to build. So does that exist today? That
Yes.
sidewalk there?
This where my cursor is currently there.
That's there. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah,
I've forgotten that. Okay.
There would just be like a ramp and a curb cut, a 10-foot wide curb cut to match the width of the trail, and then likely some like paint striping, thermoplastic paint striping to indicate crosswalk.
And the cars, are cars able to? They're still able to turn around right there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And does that show as 10 foot wide?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah.
I see that person standing there and it doesn't look 10 foot wide.
Yep, so for reference, the lanes are about 12 foot wide, where that car is, so
Okay.
Yeah, just this from edge to edge, curb to curb, that's 130 feet of median.
Okay.
Sometimes on these aerials, it's a little bit skewed depending, it's sort of an optical illusion. So that,
Okay.
It's a bit of a fisheye presentation.
exactly.
Yeah.
Distorts a little.
so this is probably more, this was what it would feel like spatially to be down and in the space on a 10-foot wide path.
Are those the size of the current trees there? Those are the current maples that are there?
So these are the reds that you
Right.
see there are ornamentals that we're proposing.
Okay.
And then the foreground trees are kind of a birch
Mhm.
LA. So those would all be proposed plantings to be put in at the gateway to kind of bolster that entrance
Yeah.
and create some density and some visual break between this entrance and the adjacent spaces.
Is there anything currently there? Any plantings that are currently there that are being repurposed or?
Yes, so
Okay.
currently, if you look under all of the, so likely with this construction, we would, whatever is there, which is very minimal at this location, and it's not exactly healthy right now either, we would have to take like the little scraggly stuff out in order to form some of these mounded areas, but everything,
LA.
the LAs, and I would say maybe there's 2 or 3 trees, like max, that are no more than less than 2-inch caliper that would need to be removed. And we could even relocate them, but honestly, they don't look super healthy at the moment.
Okay,
So what is staying are obviously, we'll see it as we move down, but
Okay.
we're trying to keep every tree and just add to it. So now I'm gonna get into more of like how the planting strategy works with the grasses. So in this plan view here, you'll notice where we have like the red dashed lines, and that indicates on the outer edge, on this edge and this edge, the dashed lines indicate the standard turf that the city would be able to mow up to 15 feet where the existing alley of trees is. So, you know, riding mowers can come in and easily get around that area. We also have that same grass strategy on either side of the edge of the path. And as you'll notice, if you're at the current Brainerd Circle in the actual middle of the circle, those paths are treated the same way. There, it's about 4 feet wide of turf grass. And that really just allows for comfort, more room for your dogs, and just like a little more flexibility and feeling of space, much like how this image describes it. So those really are the areas where there's maintenance. And the rest of the areas where it says meadow, we're proposing meadow mixes, which are native. And we would, in our next presentations, get through several pallets, which would adhere to the grasses that are already at the Brainerd Circle. So we try and match everything in kind. We also have the nomos, as Cullen described, which are more of like less flowering, but more of a meadow grass that doesn't get overly high. It stays at, you know, a fixed height.
I have a question in
Yes.
that with meadow plantings and with there being residents across from the median, will they be able to wander through that, or will
So it
how will they get on the path? Say I lived on Gates Mills Boulevard across from this.
would,
Can I easily walk through there to
Yeah.
access the path, or is that going to be challenging?
So it would look much like what you see here from 2000. This is the Google Street View from 2019, right in the center of, it would be sort of this combination. So there would be moments where they could get in through the,
Okay.
you know.
That it won't
Yes.
conceal them
Yes.
from.
Exactly. And then, so visually, so here we are down at the, on the path, this orange arrow shows where you're looking. This is giving you an idea of, you know, more of a respite area, strategies for seating. We could either do more of a formal seating or just the ledge stone seating with the sandstone, or we could do a combination of both. And again, this is showing you that mowed area here, and then the meadows here, the meadow plantings here.
We're gonna try to not put it in front of someone's house so someone's not like looking in through someone's window.
Yes, we can, you mean positioning the
Yeah.
benches? Yep, we
Yeah.
can look at specific
Mhm.
positioning so that when they are facing out,
Yeah.
they're facing not directly at houses, that are spaces in between. And also, we are also looking to very specifically add plantings of trees for that type of screening as well. We were looking at not only the trees within the median, but the trees on the properties on either side, and trying to balance
Great.
and create screening and visual distraction, is basically. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to speak to your point earlier, Annie, like, there would be areas such as this where my cursor is, where residents can come in. But if that is something, like, after we get through the presentation, that you want to see more like sight lines cut through, we can certainly design that further. So this indicates more of the ledge stone, the stacked ledge stone that is already at the Brainerd Circle. That could also act as like a seating element as well. We have little pull-off areas, which could, you know, be a number of materials, but it just allows for a break in the path.
Actually, we can move to that one. And one thing I don't think we've spent a lot of time calling out, though, is also the really kind of subtle undulating mounds that we've proposed.
Yeah.
So at the back of many of these walls, also, again, to create that visual break without making it feel like it's a barrier, we have these slightly mounded, slightly raised areas that are embellished by the height of the grasses. Just, again, trying to look for a variety of ways to help this feel like a park and kind of a separated space that people are moving through.
Yeah, and in fact, I would encourage you to go to Brainerd Circle and walk that trail, because what we're doing is exactly kind of like what was done there. So it might in this rendering look like it's a hill, like a mound, like a excessive mound, but it's really not. It's the grasses that are above it. But really, it's the exact style and design that is already at Brainerd Circle. This is our first mid crossing, so this is just west of Kerrsdale intersection. And here it's one of our moments where we're just trying to offer, a little bit of interest. We have, again, similar, it's basically this view here as well. Areas just for seating, drawing a little bit of attention to entering the trail, but it's not the main gateway as you would see further down when we get to Kerrsdale. So here's some more renderings of what that could look like. Again, you'll notice how the textures and the planting, we're really designing with planting textures, with grass textures, and the curves and the all of the sort of geometries are going to be subtle based on the planting.
So then this next moment we've gotten to, this is that kind of more densely wooded area along the path. It's probably the most dense area in terms of tree canopy. And we're really looking to kind of use that as a moment of intrigue and surprise along the path. We're looking at ways to place boulders so that people can have informal seating in there. Maybe they're more kind of nestled within the space. But otherwise, really just trying to celebrate that, not spending a lot of time changing anything here, not doing landforms, just really letting that be a special moment within the pathway. So you can see what we're looking at here. And then looking down the path through that area, how it starts to feel more enclosed. We would suggest there's a lot of kind of scrubby understory. Some of it is invasive. Clearing that out a little bit, allowing for the trees to breathe and achieve them in a larger maturity size or mature size. But aside from that, really just allowing this to be a great space along the path.
If we wanted to have less of that extra non-permeable surfaces along the path, we could choose to do that as well to keep it greener.
Do you mean not having ledgestone?
Yeah.
We're showing
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the ledgestone, I think, I don't know how to say, we didn't really professionally plan.
Yeah.
That was just leftover materials that we had. And
Mhm.
this is such an important project. I don't know that we have to be married to the ledgestone. I mean, that was just sort of what you
had to work with.
I mean, I don't know how it all came together, but, I don't know that I think this could be more, not necessarily more involved, but just, well, we'll see. Let's see your plan.
I just,
I don't-
just to comment, I like the visual differentiation and just that example right there where the little kid climbs on the ledgestone and has something to do that's different. I think it adds a lot to the design element. So
Mhm.
And it's hard to tell because I don't know if it's just in this short span or if it continues throughout. Almost, it seems like it's here. It looks like it's continuing for a while.
I think we were just thinking of it as something, so in other areas, it kind of rises up and becomes the seating and wall element to those mounds. Because we're not trying to mound in this particular zone, it's another way to use that same material. Yeah,
so it's not boring.
exactly.
Does it follow the full trail, or is it just for it's just parts of it along the
Oh, that's what I was
track.
asking.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
much of it? Because there, it was never intentional. There was never a design, I think, for that park.
For sure.
So
Yeah, it would just be like in segments, and of course, like with budgetary constraints too, we wouldn't be able to do that.
sure.
I don't know how many more recycled sandstone curbs we have in the city.
I mean, that's what I was
Right?
trying to find a way to say.
I mean, my kids skateboards, and that would just be like a great skateboard park and dangerous for him to go. So, we just You would do rails off of those things.
Yeah, and to the point of, is this everywhere along the trail? We are actually showing specific moments where we're suggesting it. So, and in the moments in between, that's where it would be just the path moving through the space. And we've highlighted those particular moments here so that, fair points, we can look at the cadence and take a look at, how much is really needed, and I think that's fair, so. So this is looking at the Cruisedale crossing. And so in terms of hierarchy, we did try to embellish this entrance and the Brainerd Circle entrance just a little bit more. Maybe having some crushed stone areas where people can get to the wall structures, get a little closer to the grounds, use them as respite areas or break areas along the path. And then also in this particular area, also including some of that kind of more embellished planting. So a little bit more color, a little bit more intensity here. Again, just for visual interest along the path, so you can see
Sorry.
What's the, on the right there and the other, orientate me, so what's
one.
this, move your cursor to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right, what's this right there?
Driveway.
That's a driveway,
Mhm.
okay, got it.
we're not doing anything with the driveways.
Yeah, it's just the way the photo is taken, yeah,
It's this driveway
Yeah.
right here.
yeah,
Comes in
okay,
at a
got it.
right there.
A question.
Yeah.
What, what would the annual maintenance be for this type of a design?
Yep, so that's actually a big part of the consideration here. So Nomo and meadow mixes have less maintenance than lawn, like traditional lawn, because they only get mowed once a season. So the lawn maintenance area along the edge where we'd be kind of keeping that area, the nice lawn panel around the existing trees, that would need mowed on a regular schedule, but the rest of it would actually be allowed to grow throughout the season, and then you'd mow it at the end of the season.
Just once a year?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about that, there was a gravel area?
Mhm.
That, what about, keeping that weed free?
So you can use stabilizer and binder resins within that, so that keeps it down and keeps it weed-free much longer. There may need to be either removal or spraying, maybe once a season, maybe once every 2 seasons. And when it's initially installed, the resin keeps that kind of material out. So it's just how long it takes for that to break down before you start.
Yeah.
You don't put visqueen under that, you put
You can
resin?
put, so the resin binds the aggregates, but you can also put down a weed fabric underneath it.
Yeah,
But with all aggregates, as debris starts to get in there and over time, the resin is what keeps it out because they can't actually get in there.
And in terms of maintenance, like where you see some of the more focused areas, like we just have a focused planting area on this side of Kersdale, on the east side of Kersdale Crossing. That's maybe where there would be, if you choose to do more seasonal plantings there, you can make it more maintenance if you want it to, or you can plant something that's a native perennial that'll just come up on its own every year. And maybe there will be just a little bit of cleanup twice a year, like a fall and spring cleanup, typical of what we all do in our own yard.
Yeah, I think we'd want to go the opposite direction, have less maintenance.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Are these pretty
yeah,
deer?
you're suggesting perennials everywhere where there's a flowering plant, are you not? Like that's a
Yes,
perennial right there.
That is a perennial,
Yeah.
yeah, that's salvia.
And is that fairly deer resistant? We have quite a
Salvia
few.
nemorosa, yes,
Okay, that's,
definitely,
yeah, because I wouldn't want to put something beautiful there just to
for
have,
sure.
to feed our
It's
animals.
It's a real problem, like we are
Right.
onto all deer resistant pellets everywhere in Northeast
Yeah.
Ohio. And then, so now we're, just to orient you, getting into the stream restoration area. And although we are not, like as part of this, contract that we are in with you, we are not actually doing any signage, but we are suggesting that these would potentially be moments, and it would be really nice to have sort of like one on either side for both directions of, whichever way you're walking. And also with the axial relationships, instead of like standing here in the middle of the basin area and looking that way, you're looking at somebody's house. We're thinking the longitudinal view, like trying to really like focus on that view so that people are enjoying the beauty of the longitudinal view rather than, just focusing on the other view.
That's thoughtful.
In this particular area, how much grading do you think needs to be done on the edge? Nothing?
We're not touching any of this because it was already done in a separate contract with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District.
Okay, so
yeah,
you can
we
just
don't
put the
wanna-
path on this
So-
side.
Hmm.
With how much of a mowing grass area on the edge?
On this part, we don't have much at all because the
Yeah.
path is really coming out.
It's about 5 feet
Yeah.
of grass.
Between the path and the road, 5 feet?
Yes, yeah. So in the previous west of this, it was about 15 feet.
Yeah.
But here this is really the best area for the path. So we only have about 5 feet.
And that's all you have, just because the
Because of
way it
grading.
slopes down.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and we don't want to mess with what was done by.
Yeah, they have to meet certain flow rates and capacities within their grading, so we're not actually within our ability to
So-
change that without going to them and letting them know and,
Yeah, we're staying outside of the basin.
And can't touch, so there's just nothing to be done
No.
take it closer to the,
Will
yeah,
there
okay.
be like a barrier so people don't like,
It's not steep. So
it looks steep from the road.
it's get out of your car and you walk down to the bottom on a dry day. It's, the thing is, if you put something there, that also becomes a hazard.
Yeah.
So you don't really want to put obstructions that somebody can hurt themselves on to keep somebody from going down a hill that probably would not hurt.
That answered Michael. I was going to ask about along the street if we needed to have any sort of pedestrian restraint, but like, is that required? Is it something that we would?
There's adequate separation, anything
Okay.
that you put in there, unfortunately, there's vehicles on the street now, there's pedestrians literally on the street.
Right.
And, here you're gonna have that additional benefit of having a curb and 5 additional feet of space. So
We
that
should be
creates a
okay.
safety net.
I'm hoping not to need that. That's why I'm
Well,
asking. So that
Right,
was.
right. I understand.
And then here we are, at the Lander Circle end of it. Do you call it Fairmount Circle or Lander Circle? We
I
had
don't really have a name for the circles
We've
yet.
had a lot of discussion.
That might be an interesting subject. Do we
Yes,
name the
exactly.
Fairmont more commonly, I think.
Fairmont. is-
Fairmount, okay. And so again, this one is not quite this is a little bit more subdued than the other entrances to the site, just because this is a very busy circle. And so again, we're just bringing in precedent images of what we want to accomplish by, mimicking and getting back to what's already at the other end of the circle.
yeah.
Or
At
other
this
end of the tree.
location, the sight lines are very important, so we're trying to limit as much as possible any obstructions that would, a car wouldn't see a person on any of these paths. So it's very needed and this is where the areas we would recommend having mown lawn
Exactly.
along the paths.
Yeah, that's why there's no specialty plantings at any of these turnabouts, these radii, just so that there's high visibility for pedestrians and cars.
And then that's sort of like the ghost of the future.
Yes.
Like that's what's coming next.
Yep, so this is gonna be moving on up all the way off the screen up here to Ursuline and so we really haven't gotten quite into that yet.
And then the one over here is for the Lander connection.
Yes, and I believe so remember, this is a 10-foot wide path, and then this goes down to a 5-foot wide sidewalk. And so also just being mindful of that transition, smaller path to larger path. So we're just trying to be safe at this location. And then getting more into the plantings and what our strategies are. So this slide shows the grasses and perennials, just the aesthetic and the feel that we're looking to achieve. With the maintained border edge, again, this is an image of the no-mow lawn. And then this is the traditional lawn with some meadows on this side. And then, yes?
I have a quick question. How wide are our mowers? Like, is there a way to just have the width of the mowing part be one mower length so that they don't have to keep going round and round the circle?
We can
We can-
certainly work with
We don't
that.
know the
Yeah.
member,
No.
mower decks.
What do you think
No, you don't want to do that. Because if you make it exactly 5 foot and you have exactly 5 foot by
Or like
mower-
10,
What's that?
or 10, so it's
Well,
like
10,
two,
yeah, 10, you're,
rather
I
than
mean, most of
15.
our, 2 of our mowers are 60-inch cut,
Oh.
which is 5 feet. But if you make it exactly 5 feet,
No, no, no,
you're,
not exactly. but
it'll
like
fall off
two
the curb
passes,
before it cuts all the grass.
Or 2 passes rather than 3 passes.
2 passes better than 3 passes, yes. And but we also have an 8-foot mower. So you can do it however you need to do it.
And then again, this image here on the lower left is more of specialty perennials, which we'd always want to do natives, of course. And then this is maybe more where there's mixed planting between grasses and just some pops of color with perennials. And then in terms of the understory and the shade trees, so the shade trees are the big tall ones with a big canopy, and then the understories are more of the smaller fruiting, very colorful in spring trees. So, and again, just hearkening to the palette that's already at Brainerd Circle, and then also using the planting palette from where the stream restoration happened. Like, we're just trying to make it as seamless as possible. And that's our last slide. So we can, if you want, we can go back to the beginning or just hit on anything that you would like to talk about.
Are there any opportunities for, how like residents can contribute to the park by buying bricks or inlaying those? Where do you think those might fit into the design?
Yeah, possibly up here, like in these little locations where there's pull-offs, we could definitely do that. Also, at the Kerrsdale entry, we were really talking a lot about that being the neighborhood gateway, because this is the only place where you have an actual intersection happening with 2 streets crossing each other, and that felt to be more of like the communal area or the civic area of the site, because the circles really are kind of busy and a little bit jarring to try and have a calm feeling of entry to, just because the cars are constantly moving. So this is really where we felt like there could be a moment for the community to have their mark. And so that's why we're showing this one image down here too. Maybe, if you have a motto for Pepper Pike, maybe that gets engraved in one of the stones, or, maybe there are moments for,
So this would be the place people would hang out a little bit because it's calm,
yes.
it's an intersection, it's easily accessible.
Mhm.
I like that idea.
So I love all the flowering trees and the perennials and the use, adding some, diversification and different layers. I'm a little concerned about the sandstone. I know I said that before. I feel like we just sort of fell upon it. We found money and we kind of threw this together on our own. And if I'm being honest, I've received the most complaints about the aesthetic of the circle. So I feel like we're duplicating something that isn't necessarily, that sometimes gets criticized. And so I'm sure you're doing it in a much elevated way. I'm a little torn about whether.
I sense this is far more understated than in the park. It's maybe a bit overdone in Brainerd Circle, to your point, but this is more spread out. It's only one layer. I really like it as a design element, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it in some places. I'm just trying to decide if that's the aesthetic that we want to put through our whole
I think we want more green. stuff.
community. I don't know. I haven't had time to think about it. This is the first I've seen of it.
I think this is so fun for kids. And I think that, I'm picturing any kid like ages 12 and under walking down that path. They're going to be on those ledges, jumping. It's great. I love it.
So do I.
I think I prefer the more of the stacked sandstone than the single pieces that we saw.
Oh, yeah.
Like where it was just one.
These.
Yeah.
This would probably be stacked when you actually look at the side view of it, but
Would it be
yeah, that's
like
good to know.
retaining wall kind of like, is that what the purpose is, or was it just?
These were more sculptural. Like,
More
again, we're looking at
sculptural.
different ways to express the stone
Gotcha.
throughout the corridor,
But could-
and in a variety of
But,
ways.
but you can't get to those to sit on them though, because of the
Yeah.
grasses.
Well, I think like to Jackie's point, I think we're just inviting kids to run in through the plantings to jump on them. Having
Absolutely.
raised a child and been one myself, like that is very tempting to just go and stomp on things.
Yeah, is that grass? I mean,
Um,
it's grass, right? Like, it's okay.
Yeah, meadow grass.
If kids were running through that, right? Yeah. No?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like these are not formal plantings, so it's gonna rebound.
Yeah.
It's like running through a meadow. So it's not as much of an issue. But again, this is to show a variety of treatments, and things that are really more appreciated, we can lean in on those, and items that maybe are not, at treatment we want to see along this corridor, we can pull back on those as well, so.
So have you done this kind of stone element in other large scale things?
Sure.
Where have you guys?
Most recently in the city of Sandusky, they're redoing Columbus Avenue streetscape, and we did this exact. And there's actually a quarry right near there that has the Berea sandstone, so we could actually, and I would guess that's exactly what your sandstone is in your.
Yeah, they
circle, too.
were just curbs from old streets
Yeah,
that.
exactly. The Berea formation is all this sandstone in our area.
Do you have photos of that online? Like, could we
Yes.
see some of the elements that you're suggesting here? If they're in other projects,
Sure.
could you maybe get those to us?
Absolutely.
I think that would be helpful. I wanted to speak to the bench profiles. You talked about maybe doing something a little bit more simple and understated as opposed to a more formal bench. I think in some ways that might flow a little bit better, like something that maybe mimics that sandstone look that people could, you could do your push-ups on, use for recreational exercise, but maybe not as formal of a bench like that.
More organic.
Yeah, I guess that's like less intentional, like,
Okay.
here's my bench, it just more of, that it just flow, that it flows a little bit better.
Natural materials.
Yeah. This is a lot to digest in
Oh,
like
for
one,
sure.
like going from nothing to visualizing a lot.
Taking up on Emmy's comment, can you share this with us? Can you send
Absolutely.
it?
Yes. Yeah, that's the plan. And
Okay.
hopefully you can,
Post it.
comment and send us feedback.
And post it on the website.
Yeah, well, after this, we'll have it available to us. And then we'll
Exactly.
be able to.
I know that we, think about safety, but at the entrance, at that circle part, we have a lot of drivers that come here that don't know the area. How can we make the pedestrians safe so that a car won't start driving down the pathway at those areas? Because people drive down the wrong side of Gates Mills all the time. And my big fear is because it is 10 feet wide and you can fit a car on it, people will do it maybe. So is there like a barrier thing that can be aesthetic, but
Yeah, so
not look-
first and foremost, I mean, part of it is that we're not creating any sort of turn radius. So the design of that kind of very narrow path coming to the edge is intentional. It's to alert drivers, this is not a drive apron. So that's the first thing. We could look at putting some of those sandstone blocks just we're trying not to make it feel like a
Right.
barrier. Bollards are not the look we want to go for here, but you could even put some of those sandstone blocks just right at the edges there. And it'd be one more thing that the driver sees that says, no, this is a neck down area. I'm not supposed to drive there. But we have to have the detectable warning strip for accessibility. So that's another visual cue.
Yep.
That's, and then also the crosswalk treatments are something that should be considered, just scale, size, warning bars, just so that they're very visually clear to drivers.
Could we extend I don't know how it would look, but how there's a different coloration, could we extend that to a differentiated it from, I don't know.
So
Something-
painting the crosswalk a little bit.
Oh, I mean,
different.
actually on the entryway, I think you have that brick or faux brick.
This is a detectable warning plate,
Oh,
so
it's
that's
a plate.
actually meant to be iron.
Okay,
I think currently, I'm not sure what your city standard is. I've seen actually just recently, before this meeting, I saw you had fiberglass detectable warning. So
Okay.
like, that's, yeah.
I was just trying to, so because it's sort of, it actually, I think Kathy makes a good point. I would hate for somebody to try to drive on it.
This distorts things a little bit. I think if you saw where this was, there is no way in your mind that you could think somebody wasn't deliberately making a stop,
Okay.
backing up, and then going down the sidewalk. There's no way that you would just naturally feel like, oh, this is an option that can go down this.
Okay,
It's much more obvious, I think, if you saw it in place.
okay,
Unfortunately, with the path, there are going to be areas where somebody with a four-wheel drive vehicle could go over a mound or whatever and drive down the path. They can do that right now on the median. I mean, it's not something that we encourage, obviously, but it exists. You could have somebody that tries to do that.
yeah, it's just scary with the idea of kids on that path that somebody could,
They would get arrested.
well, as they should. And we probably should talk about what kind of vehicles are allowed on that. I know that's something we've kind of put on the side, but if we want to have a speed, haven't we talked about that, Don?
Yes,
Top speed?
I mean, there are guidelines that you could provide for what, those a lot of times can be set based on usage. If we find that we have an issue, you could provide additional signage. I don't know that you're going to have a lot of speed issues on the path, but if you find that there is an issue, then you can provide additional signage. It's one of those things. Do you really need to put a bunch of signs out if nobody's really using it that way?
What signs are we going to have on the path? Because I think you guys mentioned you're not going to do signage for our path.
It's not, it wasn't part of the whole overall process, but it could be.
It's not
They
precluded.
do signs and we can
Oh,
contract with them to do signs.
I see.
And there is also signage for, to inform riders of approaching stop signs and that types. There is signage that will come with it
Okay.
that is
It's like at
required
Beechwood,
and regulated,
yeah.
yes.
They have like those ordinance things and then the 10 mile per hour speed limit. And
Right. You
Yeah.
can choose to do some of that additional signage. I always think it's kind of incremental. Like you could put way too much signage out
Yeah.
to start off with, and they're like, why do we have all these signs? Every 100 feet there's a speed sign.
How about the poop little trash cans? Are we gonna? No poop
Yeah, we
trash
haven't,
cans?
we haven't
There
talked
will
about
be-
any
there
waste
will be poop
receptacles
trash
or
Yeah.
have you guys,
Beechwood has poop trash cans. So,
I am
Yeah.
sure that we will need those.
Okay.
Jim's already geared up
Oh.
for it.
Yeah.
Jim's ready.
You gotta take care of the poop.
Yes, and we brought up a good point about waste receptacles as well, and that's something we can, we already certainly have a palette of ideas to choose from. So like I'm trying to get back up to this. This image of furnishing we put in here, this is like the quintessential Central Park seat. It's very famous from back in the World's Fair era, and it's still a hot piece of furniture that you'll see it in the Martin Luther King Park along the cultural gardens. So this is sort of the style, like if we do furnishings, maybe it's in line with that. It sort of has the Pepper Pike Hunting Valley aesthetic. And along with this, I didn't show the trash can in this slide, but they have a very elegant looking trash can as part of this family of design.
We usually don't lead with the trash can.
No, but it is.
Right, but it's an important element
It is
to
a very
the-
nice bench. If we
Yeah.
decide to do a bench like that, it is a very nice traditional looking bench.
Well, it's lovely.
Yeah,
It's
I
a lot of really
like
good
it.
work that you guys did. And obviously, things can get tuned up and we haven't even seen, your plantings proposal really. Understand these are very preliminary as far as the plantings. You basically did place catchers with, was that Sylvia or?
Salvia. yeah.
Sylvia,
Mhm.
which is actually a very nice perennial.
It's
Yeah.
native.
Pretty.
It blooms twice a year, I think, if you cut it back.
Yep.
It's a good perennial.
I like the Nomo grass and how it's like a darker color. It gives you some depth and contrast. Because right now we just kind of have lawn. So I think it'll look really nice.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like a turquoisey color when you put it right up against the meadow,
It's nice.
fresh green, minty color.
I'll also mention that using that Nomo grass, it actually has a lower runoff coefficient, so there's less water ends up shedding off, and it does help absorb
Yeah.
some of the water.
That's great.
So
And how does it work with some of these native plantings? Are those also helpful as far as water and,
Oh, definitely.
okay, that's,
They have very deep roots, and so, but not only do they help with the runoff, they also direct the water down even deeper into the soil profile.
Does the Nomo grass, does it have like critters that live there? I'm just don't have much experience with it. We have a lot
I
of,
mean, just like any nature grass, it probably could have, whatever you would find out in nature.
This is gonna be what I'll say is, you're in a median surrounded by cars, so you'll have as much wildlife there as you have today that survives. So, well, it won't be anything that's like, inviting more than you want, so.
And also the design strategy again is to keep like at least a 5 foot to 6 foot turf border along the path so that you don't have to be in that Nomo. You don't have to be with whatever wildlife might be in there, whatever insects are in there. So we still have some buffering zone.
and then the meadow grass has to be mowed down at the end of every season, or you just leave it and
The idea is to leave it. I mean, you certainly could mow it down if you wanted. There is just a caveat. It takes about 3 years for meadows to fully establish, and that's the one thing we tell all of our clients up front. It's a process and a labor of love, but it will get there.
That was a question of mine, is how long till we would see it looking
Yeah,
like
when-
the renderings?
Yes,
And
exactly.
like, is that,
Yeah.
3 years, 5 years, 10 years,
It's-
like where?
That starts at 3 years roughly.
Okay. And is this phased out, budgetarily speaking, not seeing any numbers yet for any of this? Are there opportunities with this, if we needed to budget out some of this over a year or two, we could?
Like phase it?
yeah.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. It's helpful that it's a datum line. It's easy
Right,
where
like-
we can pick, certain concepts.
Or adding
Maybe-
some elements, like say
Yes,
we have, there's
plantings.
tree grants that we could go for, that maybe we
Absolutely.
don't put all the ornamentals in one year,
Yeah.
we phase in.
Yeah, we were excited about the idea of bringing in, fairly larger trees just to get enough effect
Established, yeah.
earlier on. And of
Yeah.
course, those are more expensive. So
Right.
those things could be like, maybe it's a donor thing.
Yep.
Maybe that's where you put a little plaque up. So
Yeah.
so donated this beautiful oak tree.
Right,
I love that idea. Maybe instead of doing something like a brick,
Yeah.
we, as part of our
Yeah.
centennial project,
Absolutely.
I think we talked about maybe doing something with trees, and it wouldn't have to be a plaque next to each tree. There could just be a singular, somewhere at a moment or something, or at the beginning,
we think.
a thank you to the
Yeah.
community or something.
Yeah, something really elegant and.
And it would also tie to this moment of, the centennial point in the community. So that could be,
that's a great idea.
All right, well, why don't you'll get us the deck.
Yep.
and we will make it available. We'll put it on our website. We can gather whatever additional comments may be. They can all be considered, and I think I sense agreement of you moving forward with your very successful start. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur. It's a
Yeah,
good,
thank
it's a good start. I'm impressed
It
with what I see there, and I think you're on the right track from a design standpoint, so.
Well, what is our next,
Oh, yeah, what is next up?
what's the next step, I guess, with,
So we're now like in design development phase, which means now we start to really sharpen the pencil a little bit and get actual dimensions on that. We'll start to just lay it out more, put, material palettes together, get you actual planting palettes, not just images.
So we'll have some, the next time we'll come back, it'll be with zoomed in detailed plans of specific areas, and then the DD sets, and probably won't present the whole project, but we'll have it available for everyone to see and look through and see them.
And what would be the full installation timeline? How does it work? Like, how long?
But, so this can be over a season, so, stacked stone wall does not, that would be the most intense along with pavement. But the planting is a seeding planting, so it's.
Other than, the perennials and trees.
Yeah, the largest, consideration there is timing, just making sure you're getting the site.
That you're doing it at the right time of year,
Yeah,
otherwise
which is the
otherwise
fall.
you're off a season or so,
Yeah.
or two.
Well, actually, it's best to seed in the fall and let those seeds, kind of root in and establish themselves so that by spring, they're really connected with the soil,
Okay.
which works really well with the construction schedule.
Oh, I
because
see what you're
you
saying.
build through the summer and in the fall you seed, so. And the trees would happen at the same time, also the best time to plant trees.
Great.
So.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick, are we going to talk about this?
Stay,
Yeah.
sit,
Yeah.
please. Please.
Do you want me to bring up the?
Yes, thank you, Jim.
No, we all have a copy. I don't
We,
know.
we all have a copy of, is council's aware of a proposal from these folks, since they do a lot of playground work also, to take a look at Pepper Pike Park. And if council had questions about it.
Yeah, I do. Let me start with that. By the way, I love you for this project. Right on track, but I looked at your website, looked at what you do, and small suburban playgrounds don't appear to be in your sweet spot. Is that a fair statement?
No.
So
we do
for,
not.
so MKSK is a big firm, we're 130.
I understand, but local Cleveland office, who would be working
Yeah,
on
we-
this?
Oh, this, us.
Yeah.
And we just finished up the design for the city of Cleveland for Calgary and Neff playgrounds, so small neighborhood playgrounds.
Okay,
I myself have worked on a number of playgrounds. My history is even working in Boston, so I have some across Boston.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with neighborhood playgrounds and the requirements for those, the fall height zones, the types of suppliers, the materials that you can use. So
okay.
it's not, again, that's a fair review. Our website is our office, or 13 offices.
Right.
So it doesn't get highlighted there, but our Cleveland office has a defense there.
It'd be helpful for me too, if you could give us some examples, if just maybe send out an email to all council, like here's the playgrounds you have worked on, that we could just kind of get a sense of your portfolio, what you've done, your expertise. Because I couldn't get that from the website. And obviously our prior discussions were all about the big project. Because what I'm looking for, at least in my mind's eye, this project was a little bit more than is laid out here. It's understanding our community, understanding that park, understanding who uses the park, when they use it, why they use it, how they use it, and taking that broader sense of that and translating that into multiple different ideas on how to optimize the park. As you know, it's a small piece of ground. So if we install one thing, it means we can install other things. So it's very important to me that we pick the best use, the highest and best use for our community, what goes there. And this description of work seemed a little bit too directive to me about go lay this out, as opposed to step back, study the park, understand who and why it's used, and then come back to us and say, based on that data and information, here's 3 alternatives for layout. You know, one might be a water feature, one might be something else. I mean, we can't pick them all, but I'd like to given what you just told me about your background in small suburban parks, which I didn't know, I really want to tap into your expertise and experience to optimize this rather than coming with any preconceived conclusions. So just as a first step, if you could send us that background information and if you have pictures, great. So if you could do a little sales pitch on that with some background, at least for me, it would help me get comfortable that you have that expertise and experience. And then I would, for me, think about, is the scope of work a little bit broader than this initially? You tell us to understand the background and the usage that help you would drive ideas about here's how to optimize the space.
Absolutely, yeah, and actually that's the same process we used for Calgary enough, is it was a community-driven, engagement-driven process. So we started and front-ended that process with evaluating the space, speaking with the users, talking about how they're using the space, what they see as needed.
That's what I had in my mind's eye, at least for this work. But if you could start, and maybe the next council meeting, we could come together again, look at your background and experience, and then talk a little bit more about, assuming we're all comfortable with that expertise and experience, talk about the process of how you would formulate your recommendations and then execution from there.
I agree, because I believe that when we talked about hiring of a park planner at our budget meeting, we're looking for like a more holistic look at knowing that we're doing the Gates Mills Park, knowing that the Shaker Park already exists, and that we were perhaps looking to add some additional amenities or uses to the Pepper Pike Park. You guys may be the perfect firm to do that, but I don't want some pre-existing or suggestions to dictate what our opportunities are. And that, like Jim said, that made me a little bit kind of concerned looking at this, because it didn't come from us as a group. It was, it seemed
But just, to her point, understanding how it's used and who uses it, that's to be the baseline for recommendation. I mean, you tell me, you're the experts.
Right.
But that would be would it be your normal process to have some engagement with?
We do a lot of engagement. It's just a matter of if you want that as part of the contract, because that definitely takes a lot of time on our part too.
Well, and I understand that, obviously. So that's why I'm saying I thought this was under-scoped in that regard. And so understanding what that would involve and what would it cost for you to do, if you it's partially developed park, they have some spaces for some good stuff, I think. But just looking at that, and you said, to do it properly, do it fully, do it holistically, come to us with that
Yeah.
and let us look at it, okay?
Yeah. The way we wrote this, I think, was because we know that there's, a grant opportunity coming up. And
I would
so-
like us to not look at grants. Like I would like this to be I don't know how you guys feel, but more of we're not chasing grants for a project. We're looking at the best use for the space, and then if there's a grant, we go
But it's
after
not either or. It's maybe both.
maybe both, but I don't want that to be a primary focus
Not
of
in-
why we're looking at a project.
Not in the visioning.
No.
Right.
And I think we have a committee that is oriented. I
The
mean,
Parks and Beautification Committee has just been stood up, so we're a little.
that could be another opportunity. But I think that's a point well taken. We of course would want a grant if it supported what we wanted to do, but we don't want to have the grant direct
what our work would be.
what is the best project.
For sure.
We can make that determination if the project
We
isn't.
would prefer to work that way.
Us too.
And truth be told, we might decide something is too expensive or not the right choice, but I'd rather know what the best choice was
Right.
and go from there.
And I'm guessing there's engagement and there's engagement. And so you can dial that up
Yeah,
and down to
and
some extent,
I
right?
would call this more of a user assessment. So you can do engagement again, as you say, as broad as you want. This would be observation-based, interview-based, and kind of, if you can put out a call, if you'd like for
We do
more.
a survey of Monkey.
Yeah.
Give us, if you could come back with your best example of how you've done that in as close a situation as you have,
Mhm.
where you're unbounded and you want to optimize, and then we can assess cost and process and go from there. That's what if you're willing to do that, that'd be great.
Okay.
I really enjoyed your presentation. You guys.
Yeah, you're on the right track there.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Really great.
Thank you.
And it was so helpful to be able to see.
We've had a lot of fun doing it. Thank you for
We
giving
need
us
to
the
see it to be
opportunity.
able to understand it, so it's wonderful.
Thank
to be
you.
able to-
Thank you very much. Okay, next on our agenda is the council pursuant to our new ordinance will be reviewing a sign variance request for Garfield Memorial Church. George is not here.
George is not here.
Okay. At 3650 Lander Road. And we have the transcript of that proceeding was distributed to council, so you're all familiar with what occurred below. And welcome this evening. And
We're here for planning commission, and would it be helpful if you have?
I would start at the beginning.
Okay. To make sure that we have
Thank
the
you.
old fashioned way with the printed paper. I could have put it on the laptop. I didn't think about that. Well, you have that.
Thank you.
My name's Craig Berkey. I'm the business manager at Garfield Memorial Church. I know a few of you here. And thanks for all the hard work you do for our community. We try to have the same goal and make a positive contribution to our community. Garfield Church has been around for over 180 years, and we're constantly trying to adapt to the times. What I've given to you there is a site map, a picture of the current sign, and then also a copy of what the sign would look like. The 11 by 17, for those of you out here, there is the red mark along Lander. So if you're looking, that would be east. If you're down here looking east towards the church, you see that red mark on that site map. You're looking towards the church along Lander Road. And the surrounding area, just to give context, is commercial, retail and commercial. So to our north would be Carnegie Investment, right on the Lander Circle. And then behind is the office building. Of course, Key Bank is right there, our back parking lot. We have a parsonage down on the south end. And then we're separated all around by woods. As you go down Lander, eventually about half a mile down the road, you get to Beach Brook and the other Lander Haven Nethers, the residential area there. And what we found out at our meeting with the planning commission is we laid out the exact sign design that we're talking about putting in, which would replace the, and there's two pictures here, so I'm kind of moving too quickly, but they're kind of upside down here. But the one side is looking south down Lander Road, and then the other side is looking north towards Carnegie Investment next door. So this sign would replace our wooden sign that's there. What we talked about with the planning commission is making sure we'd already talked to the building department, and we covered again with the planning commission, was that the sign we are putting in would meet all the current city ordinances in a commercial zoned area. Unfortunately, our church is not in a commercially zoned area. It's a U1. So the only, the sign itself meets all the ordinances with display, the size, all that's currently on the city books. What we would need to be able to install this new sign would be just a variance for being able to do that, to allow us to put this in. Obviously, I know that a little bit of the history of Pepper Pike. I've been at the church for almost 19 years and actually coached basketball, Coach Jim's son at Orange High School.
He says hello, by the way.
But we have had great connection with the schools and others, and we know that electronic signs have been met with some serious consideration and discussion, so we understand that. At the same time, we're trying to make sure that we're communicating with our membership, but also the community in a positive way that adapts to the way that kind of society is moving with being able to put things out. And one thing we do imagine, I know that we talked a little bit about this, this electronic sign would be able to reduce the number and amount of small portable signs that we occasionally put out to identify special events and that kind of thing. So that would be there. A lot of that would be able to be removed. So what we're looking for, and I should mention, I have to mention, I have two very important people with me here tonight. Eddie Arnold's a trustee of our chairman of our trustee board. Dave Jezik, sitting behind him there, is also an important member, a very active member at our church. And I have them along. Pastor Chip, who was along for the first one, because we had to move the meeting to this week, had another prior engagement. But this is what we're laying in front of you. I'm just trying to think if there's any other contextual things I can give you, but I'm certainly going to respond to any questions that you may have about any of the pictures, the signage, and so forth.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like our law director to take us through just where we are and how this works.
Sure. This is a mandatory review of a variance that's granted by the Planning Commission that does not relate to a variance given to a single-family residence in a U1 district. So this is automatically pulled up to council for review. The standard of review would be the same standard that the Planning Commission applied below, which is a practical difficulty. In what we've heard from them is that they need to replace their sign, and they want to have a multi-use sign, if I'm understanding correctly, to eliminate some of the seasonal or temporary short-term signs, because they have different messages to communicate at different times. And so they have requested a sign that is in the U1 district. If it were in the commercial area, which is north and west of the property, it would be permitted, but it's not permitted in the U1 district.
Okay.
All right, if I may, I spent a lot of time on this one, had a nice conversation with Steve for about 45 minutes the other day, so I understand and can kind of well-grounded in the issues in this. Let me start with kind of the negatives. One concern I have with the changeable copy is it's difficult to enforce the restrictions. And the sign that I'm really troubled by is the one at Landers Circle, which is the retail space. I talked to the mayor. Mayor, I talked about this a little bit. At night, driving through there, it's very bright. It's right in your eyes. It's like high beams in your eyes, and it kind of blinds you. And I have to almost stop my car till it passes so I don't, run into a tree as I try and go up north on Landers. That's different than your sign in a different location. I get that. But one of the things I think we're missing in our regulation, which I would like to see, is having a go dark time period.
Mm-hmm.
Like at some point, you turn it off. And that's not in our regulation today. That's something I like because it's easily enforced. Here's a time period, either by the seasons or by the hour. And I was wishing George was going to be here tonight, but he's not. So I could ask him that question about how would he recommend as a city planner we could amend our sign code so we could have a hard cutoff.
We can do that. We had that conversation back in the day, I remember.
Yeah.
And it is a.
And it didn't get built into the code. So I think.
Why.
So it's a safety issue. And then we also put some other restrictions on the orange sign and the library sign that were kind of both safety and visual clutter related. So that last element about a turnoff time is something I would like to build into the conditions. And as you know, correct from the last, there are various conditions added to, we'll grant this, but nothing I think you found objectionable, but so I don't know if there's a mechanism, Steve, to impose the condition, but I need George's help to figure out how that would work.
Sure.
And And they would agree that whatever that condition is changed to, it would be part of your implementation of your.
And you're talking about full shut off. I know one of the things, because we were aware of the brightness issue from previous conversations, that's one of the things that we, the trustees and I really covered carefully with this sign company. They actually adjust brightness throughout the day, depending on the bright, how dark, how light it is, and that kind of thing.
It's a particular issue when it's winter and it's cold, winter and it's very, very dark, which we don't have street lights. So it gets very dark, and a bright sign is really a distraction to a driver. The one at Landerwood is the worst case. Less so, I'm worried about the library because it's not as just in your face like that one. But nonetheless, I don't, after pick a time, 8 o'clock, do you really need the sign? And there's almost no traffic at that point after rush hour, or whatever that time George would recommend. I'd like to build that in. So, Steve, if we tried to resolve this tonight, is there a way I could build into my statement that?
Well,
so that's not what I'm worried about is a property right usage kind of issue.
Sure. Let's distinguish what we're doing here tonight. This would authorize a sign to go in to the U1 district in this specific location, but subject to the general rules applicable to such signs. And there would be, particularly when you've identified sort of a nuisance component of sign usage, you could come back and say, we need to have at least a tone down of the brightness, if not a full shutout off after a certain time, and that would be permissible. The right that they're acquiring for usage of the property pertains to the nature of the sign. You still have the authority to regulate the usage of the sign, the timing of use.
So that there's no issue about acquiring some right by the grant of the variance that would limit our ability to do that.
Right.
No issue.
Similar situation if you had over lighting of let's say you had lights that were too bright. They were, as originally installed, they were okay, and then they changed the component of the light and they were too bright.
Yeah.
You would have the authority to say you're creating an off-site nuisance from what you're doing. There is no land use right to maintain a nuisance. So where you have a situation where either drivers are threatened or it's impacting neighboring property owners, you have the authority to step in and say, hey, we need to change this. There's no right to maintain a nuisance.
But I don't want to be in a situation, if we can just going in to Jim's point, regulate it ab initio and just say, it's going to be
a condition of the variance.
The condition of the variance, as opposed to having to establish a nuisance later on.
No.
I don't want to have to do that.
No, if you work into a motion, let's say you want to make a motion to confirm the granting of a variance subject to the following conditions. Full cutoff by 10 o'clock or whatever the number is, so that they get a reasonable use, not turned down before 5 o'clock or whatever it is. Pick numbers and certainly there can be a back and forth negotiation to see if it works for them. So the last thing you want is them to take an appeal of your decision, and you really want to have sort of.
I'm sure they really want to hire lawyers and do all that, right?
Well, I can't speak against that because I know where my bread's buttered. But
we want to work with the church.
Absolutely.
To get to a
Does
good solution.
the existing sign at the plaza have any dimming function like you're proposing?
So the current sign we have right now, we used to have 2 solar lights on either side.
Sorry, I'm not talking about your sign. I'm talking about
They don't operate Landerwood style.
commercial one. Do you know, does the one,
I just walked by that today.
yeah, like when you're coming around in the northeast
I don't
corner?
know if that has a dimming.
Right, because that's what I'm like, do we need a shut off time or do we just, because reading through your proposal, if it dims according to the ambient light, then do you need to have a 10 to 5 cutoff?
Yeah, but supposedly the shopping center one too but it doesn't work and they don't do it. At least maybe that's an enforcement issue that we need to.
Yeah, because
Jump
that's not
into-
the church's fault.
But no, and I'm not.
Right.
I'm
No,
not
no, no,
con-
but I'm saying like,
I'm not
because they're
conflating
not
two, but
compliant.
I'm a little concerned because we look at the Landerwood Plaza sign as an example of something in that area and the brightness of it. This is also going to have 2 screens. So you're going to have one on each side. Landerwood, I believe, only has one facing. I don't think that's double sided.
Right, but that's also on the circle, and you guys are down from the circle. I'm just trying, because I know I that sign, ugh, I don't
I
like
have
it
some-
either. But like this, my mind is a whole different situation.
I agree, but from I mean, you tell me. I mean, do you care if your sign is lit up after 8:00?
I
Or
would
pick
say
a
that
time.
we have events in the evening that sometimes get out at 9 or 10 o'clock.
Mm.
But I mean, I think we're compromisers. So I think there's a time that we'd be willing to say. Yeah, because I know we actually talked about that. We can actually shut it off
Right.
and have it come back on at a certain time. We know that can happen.
You're
You can
able to-
program it to do
You can
that.
automate that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we do require, just as a side note, we require, which is obvious probably, but just to state it, a shut off function. So if the sign is malfunctioning,
Right.
you know, and it's flashing or
cannot
doing
flash.
something like that, that the sign, which is not, but I'm just saying the function is inherent. to
In the
sign
regulation, yeah, it's in our
And
regulation.
in our
currently.
regulations, it's,
Yeah.
which is very understandable. And you probably wouldn't want your sign doing crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, so changeable copy, an electronic changeable copy, in my view, should not then allow any temporary signs there. That if we have something that is changing, and you said it may,
It will definitely decrease the majority.
but may decrease a majority, that to me, so now we're going to have an electronic sign with changeable copy on it, in addition to like other temporary signs there, that it's not going to eliminate all the signage on that, in that area.
What's the U2, I don't know, Steve, if you have that, what's the U2 reg on? Well, they're not in U2, I understand, they're U1.
But they're trying to use the U2.
Right, for this
Um,
variance purposes. So.
Right.
And one of my concerns is that it is, you know, they are in a U1 district and there are other, and I, you know, this is just my overarching concern. It's not my concern about the church,
No.
but that the whole slippery slope concept that we have, that how we have 3 signs that, to my knowledge, in Pepper Pike, the library, which went up without any kind of request, it just was put up, and then the city had to deal with it. And it's pretty small, and they think they limited different things they could do. What, you know, and I think there were maybe a few enforcement issues. The school, which then requested a sign and was given a very limited variance, only 2 colors, had to stay between the brick pillars that were already in place, only changing every 30 seconds, no graphics, anything like that. And now the one on the circle, which I think many of us have concerns about as far as a safety issue. I don't think that I think there could be a safety issue, but not on the scale of the one on the circle, which actually concerns me on a regular basis. Today, I thought it was distracting when I drove by and there was a pale, like pinkish background with very small writing on it. And also maybe enforcement issues on that sign. I'm not in any way saying that the church would be that sort of issue, but I do have that overarching issue of where are we going with these signs? You know, a lot of them are at intersections. That's where a lot of these buildings are. And if we approve one in a district that's not the commercial district, will there be others coming? And is this starting to become a problem visually, but also safety wise? Because I really do think there are some safety concerns.
I think you can point to the function of, 2 of the 3 of those signs and how much value they add to the community. And I think you could put the church in with the school and the library, and the events that you guys host really add to the sense of community in a way that I would think we would want to support in using the option of a variance in a very positive way. Like that's what variance is
No,
for,
and
right?
it's a point well taken. I was intimately involved in the school, in the erection of that sign, and a supporter of it. And it was a very big deal when they got that sign. I mean, the exact color of orange. If you ever drive by, you will see it is not red. And when it turned red one day, because we didn't know how to work it properly, we had to shut it off. for a while.
Well,
And so I just want to make sure that we're making wise choices.
but I would add that as a condition here, also the one color, because I think that's both a safety issue and an aesthetic issue. And I think both the library and Orange do that. It works perfectly well. And so they don't have like fireworks going off with multiple colors and things like that, which just are a visual
Sure, I
distraction.
understand the
And
action piece of
yeah.
it, but I would probably challenge you a little bit on the one color thing.
well, the library and the school are operating under that now.
Okay.
And I'm a little confused about the way this this looks.
Go ahead.
Where is the Garfield Memorial Church at the top? Is that not changeable?
That's not changeable. So the
Okay.
top part it will be the same on both sides. The Garfield Memorial
Okay.
Church will be static on both sides.
And then
The
the,
bottom 2 feet or so, 2.5 feet, is the electronic sign piece.
So
okay.
the top
And
part is painted.
the background to,
The whole, it's a bronze, it's a bronze, dark bronze metal, that borders the whole thing and sets in.
But the
And
Garfield Memorial Church, is that like a sign or is that a digital?
It's
That's
fair.
a sign.
That's a sign.
That's actually
Okay,
a
that's
sign that's static, it'll be on both sides and the top.
and that's not like,
That's not, that's not.
okay, so what, I don't understand the background to where he ends, where faith begins. What is that?
So those are the digital
Yeah.
displays. That's the different pixels or whatever, that brings the colors out. So we have the ability to set colors, change colors.
Yeah.
But we were imagining a more aesthetic, so like maybe, just like we would put out, like, let's say our Easter banner for a couple of weeks leading up to Easter. We had flowers or some type of static picture, which would be similar to a sign if we were announcing a special event. It
So-
wouldn't be shooting off fireworks or anything like that. It'd be a static picture to add some, ambiance or some connection to the words that are there.
But it
That's
would
why-
be a static picture?
What's that?
It would be a static picture?
Yes.
So we imposed on both the library and the school just a black background and letters as both aesthetic and traffic. And to be consistent with that, I would like to do that here as part of the condition of this ordinance, because that is consistent with how we've treated those other two for both aesthetic and driver distraction.
And those were in proper zoning?
Well, no, they weren't. They weren't.
They weren't?
The library's on a U1.
There it is.
Yeah. Library's on a U1. And
school
the,
is it, though?
and the other church in our community, I understand, is on U1 as well.
I think that's right.
So we have the Western Reserve Church up on the circle, which is like you guys,
Very familiar.
grew up in a residential and just became something bigger than it once was whenever it was founded a long time ago. So that's another place where at some point we may have this same issue, and they are in a much more residential area. So so from the city standpoint, I just want to preserve and be consistent here with how we've treated the other two institutions, the library being in a U1 district and the school being school. I think the school is
I think it's
U2.
important to point out that the zoning, I mean, although there are problems with the operation of the sign at the plaza there, that is the proper zoning for a sign, and
Understood.
it's a different set of rules. So there's authority for the city to impose further regulations because the variance is being granted in terms of how the communications are made.
And I
I'd
think,
like to
go ahead.
Finish. What is the size of this sign, the current sign?
They're the same.
It's actually fairly close. It's a little bit more longer. It's a little bit longer.
So more than 6 feet? Because this is supposedly 6 feet.
Tony, I went out and measured their sign, actually with my tape measure. I actually did that.
Love it.
And from a square footage,
Councilman.
from a square footage standpoint, it's almost exactly the same as the
But
sign
I'm
they
worried
want.
about
Wise,
the
it's just
the
yeah.
dimensions rather than.
Dimensions, height, width and height.
It's 6 feet?
Yes,
Oh, okay, so it
Yeah.
is 6 feet.
6 feet by 4.
I'm certainly not, the authority on aesthetics, but I like the fact that this curves at the top, and I don't like the fact that this doesn't. This is a much softer look, and this looks too
This is-
commercial to
this-
me.
is
Just the
this-
sign itself.
Has this gone, by the way, has this gone to ARB?
I
This
don't
new
believe-
sign?
I don't believe so. It would, and I believe it would have to go to
Right.
ARB. That's my
It
understanding.
hasn't gone to ARB yet.
That I was gonna
Yeah.
ask, like, so this would be subject to ARB review. And I want to say Garfield Memorial Church, you guys have been a longstanding, wonderful member of our community. You host community events. I can't say enough. And a beautiful building, beautiful Western Reserve architecture that really speaks to what the aesthetics of our community always have been. I, like Tony, I do kind of struggle with the modernness of a digital copy sign, and especially this
Yeah.
bronze elements and stuff.
We have to build.
I'm not-
To change that. We actually looked at different things, but we definitely can go back and look at the additional options there. There was there was a rooftop, there's a little bit more rounded. So I mean, that's something, if we had to work with ARB.
I think
we would
ARB
do the
would-
best we
ARB
can.
ARB would be the best place for that.
Going off of
One of
what,
the biggest
going off
parts
of what you
this
said,
variance is actually just the size of the physical sign. It's not actually whether it's a lighted sign or not. In a U1, you're allowed to have a 4-foot sign. This is actually a 6-foot sign. We had to go before when we did a large expansion to the church a few years ago, well, a number of years ago now, part of that actually included a sign variance. And so it's the kind of the more addressing issue that's going on right here is not necessarily that we are adding an illuminated sign. It is actually more in regards to the additional size that's happening on the U1 versus the U2 district. We are again, we're at your guys' disposal in regards to all of this discussion with the lighted sign. We obviously have been working with the building department and all those kinds of things, but that's actually the primary reason for the variance would be to allow the additional size of the sign than it would necessarily the illuminated.
It's actually both. Illuminated signs in U1 are prohibited, expressly prohibited,
I
yeah.
want to just echo or take off on what Emmy said. And I think that I would be much more comfortable with a sign that echoed the Western Reserve look of your building. And to me, this doesn't, echo that at all. This is very modern in my opinion. It doesn't look like a church sign to me.
But if you look at the orange sign, they actually did, orange schools, they did some work around it to kind of soften the hard edges.
Mhm.
And I would think that ARB might have some thoughts on.
Yeah.
And the orange,
That's what I'm saying.
the orange
Yeah.
school sign, it was intentional to use it was actually already there. They had to adjust it, the brickwork that matched the building. I believe there was some landscape that was put in, and it was all through a kind of conversation that happened with ARB. It actually came about after the library just threw up their sign. And the school said, well, wait, we would like a sign, but at the time we were very cautious about wanting to be very collaborative with ARB and the school because, we knew there were restrictions, and obviously the school community supports is in Pepper Pike. So that's how the compromise kind of arrived and was put together. And I know that it's been very, very functional for the school. It's been really great for posting events at the school and things like that, so people don't have to go out there in the snow. But it was pretty restricted, and it still is.
Okay.
I don't.
One second, gentleman from the church. wanna say something.
Sure.
The only thing I would like to say is, and we realized that it's a more modern approach. And part of that was, we wanted it to be a more modern approach. What's happening in the church today, people like myself, baby boomers are dying off. And the biggest growth for the church is millennials. And we're trying to attract millennials, and millennials are really more attracted to digital signs and things like that. So we're trying to straddle the fence. We're trying to preserve the architect, the tradition, but also attract the millennials with a more modern approach. We're trying to shed that image of Garfield being a church of a bunch of old folks, and we have a lot of youth programs, we have a lot of things going on. So we intentionally kind of went out after a more modern approach. So But we're willing to compromise. We think it's more important to be able to just get the message out of
Right.
the things that we're having. And I, for myself, I think those paper signs are just tacky. You know, we go out there, we put them out and they're stuck in the ground and the wind is blowing. They're just tacky. And we think this would be really an upgrade to the neighborhood.
Well, I'm not going to debate you on the tackiness of the signs. The design, ultimately, of the sign itself, that is a decision that's going to go to ABR and not to this council. This is the council, is where we, I think there's some, good points that you guys are bringing up, but it's not really, it's not our function or your function here as council to deal with the design of the sign, so far as curved top, shed top. That's ABR.
I find it difficult to, if we're expected to grant the variance, to grant a variance on something that we haven't seen yet.
Well, I think, well, it's your decision, grant a variance or not, obviously. I think the question before here, and Steve, you'll correct me, is on the electronics of this thing,
Yeah.
as to whether or not that is even going to happen.
The variations from the code are what's in front of you. And so there would not be an electronic sign permitted in the district. That's one of the requests. They've previously received the sign variance, so the size of the sign is not even really in front of you, because that runs with the property. They have a right to build a sign of that size within what the variance previously permitted.
I have a quick question. With your vision of the digital sign, how often do you think it might change? Is it going to be that 30 seconds or is it going to be like a week sort of thing? Or
Isn't it 3 minutes?
That's regulated in the code.
It's regulated in the
My-
sign.
3 minutes, right?
My recommendation would be to include the limitations that you find in the code relative to the other signs, and they would have to abide by that.
Definitely planning to abide by that. There's
Yeah.
no need to speed that up. If anything, it could go longer.
If you look at the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's a section in the code that talks about these movable signs.
Yeah, it's,
And we might want to look at it. So Jim made a very relevant
Yeah.
point about shut off, but there's a lot of restriction and it's basically there's safety restrictions. I mean,
Right.
you don't want things moving. You don't want distractions. We might want to take a closer look because there might be a few more distractions we've missed now that we've experienced one sign.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to make a point of adding that the building across from us would probably be considered, it's Friendship Circle. It's not a church now, but it's, I think, a religious-based institution. So there are other buildings within the U1 district.
that's what I was going to ask.
Maybe Ursuline. I don't know.
And-
is across from-
Synagogue.
and once again, that location across the street, lots of residences around, which is,
Yeah, so I'm
Just-
just bringing it up. That's one of my concerns.
and so that just, so you understand, that we need to preserve, what we've done for others, that's history, but that's binding on us in some respects, but we need to preserve our flexibility to have different outcomes where there's different circumstances. So if there's a house next door to that property, and the last thing that house wants, I'm sure, is sitting on their front porch and watching a digital sign flashing while they're only having their cup of coffee in the morning, or so.
That's one of the advantages we have. We don't have that.
I agree, you're a different case, but we have to apply this same standard in different circumstances. And we need to have the ability to say, well, no, you're not the same as the library, which is a mostly commercial district, or you surrounded by commercial, which is why imposing these conditions are so important to preserving the aesthetic of the city and making sure that someone doesn't say, hey, I live next door to this place, and you're going to put a bright digital sign that's going to flash in my bedroom window? No, so that, just so you understand what we're trying to preserve here. Yeah.
The piece that we're struggling with, I think, as a threesome a little bit is the taking away the ability. It's like having a computer only having the monochrome, monochrome screen.
We're allowing one color.
But that doesn't really do a lot for whoever looks at it. It
Well-
might share information, But if you're able to do it in a way with a static picture, along with it, whatever it be, balloons, for our big children's event. We do a lot of children's events, often connected with Orange Schools. But, you bring out the excitement, you bring out, just by having different colors, you wouldn't send out a birthday card, just for a, 8-year-old birthday party and just black font. You tried to do something to touch it up a little bit. And we're the same way, just as Eddie was trying to explain, we're as I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, churches in this day and age are kind of considered antiques. They're historical, and we're really big on changing and pushing, not pushing, but adapting to the times where most people are having different things, a little bit more exciting coming at you than just a black screen with
information,
green letters.
And I think there has to be an element of trust. I mean, we've all complimented your beautiful building and what care you've taken with that. You're not going to do something tacky with the sign, even if the sky's the limit. So to my mind, I think an element of trust has to be involved where, sure, like put those balloons on the sign for the kids event, and you don't want them all to be black and white balloons.
Right.
So yeah, I get where you're coming from.
But the problem is that there's a human element, and that, to Jim's point, there are other buildings, and so, we thought, for example, on the Circle, there were times when things were on that sign that were not allowed. And I think we all recall seeing moving things.
No, they're not. I don't.
There had been at
they
one
did-
point.
Oh,
They
were
were.
there?
Yeah.
So it was enforced.
That was enforced. I
Okay.
don't know that we're always enforcing it.
They're
I
not
think it's-
allowed, they're not allowed.
Yeah, they're not allowed. It's dangerous, especially where it is.
Yeah,
It's the
and it's
most,
still going on. It's just an enforcement issue, I think. It's both,
but it's a challenge.
but it is, both in terms,
changes.
enforcement issue in terms of what they're doing with it, as well as the brightness. So you and I talked about that, but
Right. No, it needs to be enforced, absolutely.
and it is really a traffic hazard there. And it's not your case, but it's still an issue with people driving by in terms of being just, one of the reasons we have the same message for a long time is you want drivers doing
Totally get that.
as they drive by.
That part, you don't get an argument from that. us on that one.
And some of that is related to the color issue as well. If it's just text, you read it, you keep driving. But if there's graphics in display, it's just further distracting. So that, to me, that's somewhat of a distraction issue, but more of an aesthetic issue. And also, but more importantly, that's the restriction we posed on everyone else.
Gotcha.
So I don't want to, for all these reasons I talked about, I don't want to give up.
Walking the subway, like I do quite often across the Circle, that sign grabbed my attention. I went to Play Matters because they had something colorful on that said that was at Play Matters. So that caught my attention. I walked down to Play Matters. They wouldn't have had me walk in that door if that would
I'm
have been.
confident you will have compelling messages that will get them to walk into your door, like this one. And I think will be more than adequate to.
Speaking
your
of
message
safety,
across.
I will say every week when I drive down Mayfield at Mayfield Middle School, they have a word of the week. And I find myself, it's silly, I'm on my way to a destination I go to often. And I find myself changing my traffic pattern to see what the word is and what the definition is, to see if I know it before it comes up. Was I right this week? And that leads to like my overarching concern with digital signs is that they are distracting, and it is a busy traffic circle. And I do have some concerns about messaging. Would drivers be that distracted that they would not be paying attention or slowing down or not moving appropriately there with just the busyness?
Okay,
So-
so let me just summarize for a second, so we know where we are right now. It seems to me that the issues on the table right now is an electronic sign at all, yes or no? Will there be variable colors or a single color, yes or no? Will there be a cutoff of time that it needs to be shut down? I have it on good information that George would suggest 11 o'clock is the appropriate time
That late?
for those situations, yes. And it seems like, I must say, that given the hours that
Doesn't
we
happen
hear
all the
that
time, but
it
that 9 or
operates.
10 o'clock time.
No,
is
it could be
not-
whatever,
10 o'clock
but
work?
he's saying that would be the outside hours, sir.
Outside meaning,
Meaning not later than that.
Well, and
Earlier is up to you guys, but
Okay.
I'm just saying he's saying,
can we have any enforcement on temporary signs? Is that within our,
yeah, we enforce temporary signs.
No,
well, but
You're saying as a condition
as a
of
condition
the sign.
of
I don't-
a
I don't know
digital
that you can
sign?
eliminate all temporary signs, but certainly you could have a limitation if it was agreed to that there'd be, one sign of a certain size.
There'd only be one. We have a short banner, it's usually up for about 2 weeks before an event.
Mhm.
And it sits maybe about 80 feet from the circle as you turn down Lander. It's right there close to Carnegie, but on our property. And the banner is about 5 feet long, about a foot and a half, 2 feet, 2 feet high. It's usually up for about 2 weeks.
So operationally, if that's what they'd agreed to, you could make that a condition of the variance, so that
But it would eliminate all the ones we're talking about, the
Right.
real estate type signs,
Right.
those smaller ones that maybe add a little bit to the techiness that we.
You don't think your banner can be incorporated into, if you had a movable electronic sign incorporated into that?
Possibly. We're kind of not experienced at this either. We've
Right.
done all the what ifs with the sign company and talked about all these things. We know the capabilities it has, the ability to adapt, to dim the brightness, et cetera. Paying a lot of money for it, so we want to make sure that, some of the features would especially be not used. We'd be paying, it's like getting 80 inch screen TV and you're only able to use one section of it or something.
Correct, there's one sign, we have an overflow parking, which is behind the church, up in the, we do put a sign up to say Garfield.
On the day of
On the
events.
day of the event, we put it up.
I don't think that.
That
was-
respectfully was not what I was talking about. More like the, hey, Maudie Thursday, service, or, like things like that, fish fry tonight, like those continual, I'll just call them distractions on
Those
top
small
of.
signs I could guarantee you those would be gone. It's the banner, I think we definitely like that as if it's a possibility to maintain that banner that's up usually about 2 weeks before a big event.
that would be your temporary sign is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, the
That would be your one
temporary sign.
temporary sign if we built that into this.
Other than the day of events where we're directing traffic and that.
Parking, yeah.
And you just don't feel that you can achieve the same messaging of awesomeness of your church with a existing sign like what
Let
you
me put it
have
this
with.
way. Our church from the outside, as you mentioned, is, very typical of the architecture in Pepper Pike. One of the most common feedback we get from guests is, oh my goodness, we never imagined it looked like this on the inside. We thought it was stodgy and old fashioned like the outside. And that's what families kind of refer to that. I mean, that things are changing, architecture's changing. So until they come in and see all this cool stuff we have inside for the kids, we have an amazing, we work with Disney, kids entrance to our kids area, just a really catchy kind of way to draw people in. And we get that all the time. I never imagined it looked like this on the inside because I'm just used to driving by and seeing the outside.
Well, respectfully, I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful on the outside, and I think architecture trends come and go, but I think it has stood the test of time. So I wouldn't feel insecure about your beautiful
Certainly not
structure.
arguing with the architecture look, but we envision this as a way to transition and say a little bit more of a stamp to people that are visiting community. This is a little bit more who we are.
So
One thing I just wanted to,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to call out to council, and it's sort of, in addition to the slippery slope concern I have, I have here, but in other cases, I've also had it just coming to all of us here tonight. The question about determining practical difficulty. And this sign, to a certain degree, speaks to that to me, because the definition of practical difficulty would mean, something that basically it rises to a level where you couldn't resolve the issue in another way. And that's very much oversimplifying it. And it's just something that I question in our role granting a variance, not in setting an ordinance, but in granting a variance to ordinances that have been put in place. Is this a practical difficulty that you cannot have an electronic sign or, the visuals? Does that actually constitute a practical difficulty? And I would call that to question in a few other circumstances also, not for tonight. So I just put it out there as food for thought, because we have ordinances in place that regulate various things, in this case, where you can have signs or what kind of signs you could have. And when we grant a variance, to assess practical difficulty, I think we have to really ask that specific question. So just putting that out there.
So let me summarize where I am, and then on this, and get the sense of council, what more you all need. I kept, kind of like Rick did, I kept a long running list here for your pleasure and enjoyment. So I would approve this subject to, first, the recognition and in consideration of your unique location in the community and being surrounded by commercial, and be very specific about that's why this is okay in this instance, and other circumstances will require different outcomes or potentially require different outcomes. Having said that, the list I would put is, first, it's for use in a manner and for purposes consistent with your application letter of March 14th, 2024, that you would comply with all the U2 regulations governing signs, including illuminated signs and changeable copy signs, that you would comply with the automatic dimming, which you already committed to in your letter, that you would do that. It would be a single color type on a black background, off at 10, on at 6 a.m., and subject to ABR review, and then build in a limitation on one other temporary sign. So in my mind's eye, I've kept a list, and I've thought about this for a long time before this and did a lot of work kind of understanding the wheres and whys in your circumstances. But on that basis, I would go forward with, I read the transcript, and Steve, I'm really struggling because there's comments flying in from all different directions. And I don't think it's fair to have the church to go back, and I read this transcript and you make a comment and someone else makes a comment, and then at the end you kind of say, okay, there's the conditions. So what I would like to do procedurally is disapprove that and give them the list here in one list, that they could go in one place and say, okay, here's my conditions. Rather than try and marry up what they did.
You're granting the variance with your conditions.
With these conditions, but I want to repeat, kind of like that other law we deal with, we want to repeal the last one, so there's no confusion. So that's where I am. I'll throw that out to council here and see if that's actionable tonight or whether we need other information. So,
Well, and as a point, just as your point to the transcription, it's really hard. It's digitized. So there are whole things that the words aren't the right words. It's just how the computer.
I did clean it up quite a bit.
I know you probably did.
Yeah.
There was, I won't even say, but there were a couple of things that were actually funny and words that were left out. So it is what it is. It's certainly at least something to.
but if we did it that way, that some future generation that have one place where the list is numbered 1 through 7, and you know exactly where you need to go, the transcript was just difficult to pull together.
Yeah, it's not.
And get the restrictions.
It gives you some sense, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that aren't.
So I'm hearing that the single color would be a problem for you guys. Like, is that sort of your number one?
We'd have to go back to the drawing board, I think. I mean, we have something in motion, but I think we'd have to go back. We're not gonna pay the amount of money we're gonna pay for this, with this company to limit that much. I mean, it would be a serious limitation, it'd be a serious limitation for us. Yeah.
I don't understand why that's a problem. I really don't. I get I understand that, council wants to be sort of maintaining a certain standard, but to me, that's more almost like a personal preference.
No.
That standard's been set by other
it's-
signs within the community.
It's three things, at least. There's a part of aesthetics with that, to be
Mhm.
sure. It's the safety issue, and it's the fact that we've imposed that on every other requirement in similar situation. The circle's in a retail district, that is
Mhm.
different sign requirements, different, all kinds of requirements. I'd wish we'd done more there.
Yeah.
But as a condition of a variance, this is what, and if we vary it now, I'm concerned that we're stuck with that for other
Is
circumstances.
there a way to eliminate the word black background and just make it a single color background with giving us the variation of being able to use a different color font?
I don't know.
I mean, that was I share your concern, especially because it was a limitation we imposed on the school.
And it's both, it's a driver distraction issue too, actually, because you want drivers to read it, get the message, and get their eyes back on the road. And the more it's distracting, takes longer to read, then the longer driver eyes are off the road. And if there's other balloons it's just more of a distraction. And that's part of the reason that we impose this on the other two circumstances. So it's not just aesthetics, it's that as well as the future ramifications of what we might have to do.
I have a hard time picturing
And other
various
circumstances.
colors being distractions. Like given the state of the world and everything that's out there, a few colors on a sign to me is not a distraction, but.
I'm struggling with the practical difficulty piece of the variance, so.
So what,
I have one question.
Yep.
Just to, I'm trying to, I don't want, it sounded to me from the comments afterwards that your questions may have been gone over. I think the question was, does it concern council whether or not the background of the sign is white with black letters on it as opposed to black with white letters on it? Is this a concern of yours somehow?
I had another one. Number one, we didn't allow the other signs to do that. They're a black background.
I don't remember if the background was considered as opposed to
It was a
typeface
two-color.
being single
It
color.
was a two-color sign, a single black it was black background, so the color would show on it. And in the case of the school, the library put up their sign and they were
Right,
required
the
to.
library, I remember. I don't think I ever saw this. The school just stay at the ABR level?
Yes,
Yeah,
well,
so I
yes.
don't think I ever saw the
It
school
was,
sign.
yeah, I don't know, I don't remember anymore if there had to be a variance, but there were extensive conversations about, and we were maybe overly cooperative because we wanted to be cooperative.
Mhm.
And wanted to, we were very cognizant that there was an ordinance in place, so we were trying to basically just have a sign that could be operated remotely. And when we were told that's what we should do, we agreed, and we actually, I think, fine-tuned the color orange, so it was the exact color. I have clear recollection, because it took a while to get it right.
And it's very easy to read. It's very effective. It's just you get the message, you keep driving. So it's just,
It announces events, it celebrates students when, their achievements, it talks about when school's canceled, times of events, things like that. It's effective, I think. I think if somebody spoke to the director of communication, Lou DeVincentis, he would agree that it was very effective.
Okay.
Do these
Excuse me.
words,
I
what I hear
apologize.
you saying is, as it's presented,
the colored background would be outside, the words would be fine. So if the words were on a black background, that would be fine. Under what I just said.
once again, I just go back to, this is much more inviting to a family with children than normal. And that's one of the reasons you have signage. I'm looking at our primarily white sign, but, we have a logo that is, as colorful as you can get. We're trying to represent the diversity of our church, which is probably one of the most diverse churches in the city of Cleveland, which that's something we value. So when you start limiting, taking away who we are, a mosaic in the community, which is kind of our beacon to
I
to our
think you
growth,
could,
to
I
our
think you
growth.
could incorporate that in the stop fixed part of the sign.
So it is, and actually that's kind of our artwork. Instead of doing the whole logo, we did just pieces on the side.
It's the changeable copy that I'm referring to. So if you wanted to put in my mind, if you wanted to put your mosaic as part of the fixed part of the sign, I don't have a problem with that.
And that would be with ARB. They obviously, that's beyond our purview.
And the orange sign has orange above the digital sign as orange, and I think, does it have a line? It has something there.
I might say Orange Schools. I don't know if it says,
I think it
to
says
learn, to lead,
excellence.
to make it, or does it say
Excellence in
excellent
education is what's standing out to me, but I
I think you
could
can
be
incorporate that in the fixed portion. I
Those
don't
are
have
the
a
two
problem.
taglines.
And
I
we
don't know
have,
if they were
yeah,
chosen.
But what I hear you saying is, if this is how we want our top part, static part to remain, only part of our logo is there. Basically, what you're proposing that we couldn't even post our logo down below, which seems very restrictive. I mean, just because it's on above doesn't mean that we'll never use it down below. And that's who we are. Our church is that. That's why we have that logo. It's to draw to our diversity, which is the strength, the biggest strength of our church. I mean, that is the biggest strength of our church in this community, is our diversity.
Oh, we're just talking about the electronics of
As
the
I
sign.
am, I'm using an actual example. You're saying, I'm just repeating back what I heard you saying. The proposal is, we couldn't even, if we wanted to, we wouldn't meet ordinance under the current proposal that Jim just laid out. We couldn't even post our logo on our changeable sign.
That,
Does-
I'm
does
not,
not
I'm not
sound right.
sure under the existing ordinance, you could do that anyway.
Obviously, it's showing right now, this sign's gonna fall apart in the next year or so, it would really, the sign here, that's a big part, and we decided to go only partially part of it, but I'm just trying to use an actual example that under where I hear you proposing, we couldn't even put our logo on the
Craig,
change sign.
You could put your logo on the fixed portion of the sign, is what I'm saying. So I'm not, I
So
think.
you have to decide, what I want you to hear from us is, you decide, we may actually have to go back and not do a sign at all. You just need to hear what I'm saying. So we came, to lay it out. You have to decide. You guys have a tough job, and I admire the work you do. You guys do amazing work for this community. But you need to hear from our perspective too. So I know that you have set some precedents with the different organizations you've talked about, but you also need to hear one of the advantage of an electronic sign in this day and age, maybe not in Pepper Pike, is it allows you to share a little bit of your personality to the community in a way, in an organization that does nothing but provides positive impact on this community.
And just so you understand, it's not at all not understanding the commitment and the work of the.
If you feel it
It's
has
just
to
that
be
it's just that
apples to apples.
practical difficulty, in my understanding, is not supposed to be specific to the individual. It's supposed to be, and I don't know if that's what
Due to the
we're
condition.
addressing, due to
Right.
the conditions of the land. So it's practical difficulty.
Okay,
It's
Do
more
what
like
you have to do.
a ravine
And then
or
we will
something.
go
It's
back,
not.
we just have to go back and see what we want to do next, because we wouldn't be able to proceed as we envisioned.
I'm struggling with two things, and one is the practical difficulty. I haven't heard any discussion of what the practical difficulty is.
If I could speak to
Yeah.
that when you're done.
Let me finish. And I'm worried about the slippery slope. Even if we say we're granting this in this U1 district because it's a special U1 district, the next guy that's in the U1 district that wants one of those is going to say, it's not that different. I mean, it's going to be another battle.
It will be.
It'll be another battle. The slippery slope will have been entered into. We will have already started sliding.
We're already on it.
And I
I
understand,
don't
we
want to,
understand that.
and I don't want to slide any further because of the long-term consequences in other locations to the city. And that's what you need to understand.
I totally get that.
Okay.
The practical difficulty comes from the fact that this is a non-conforming use in a U1 district that has a need to communicate in a way that usual uses in the U1 district residences don't need. They've got programming, they need to communicate to people. And the zoning code, because they're in a U1 district, the zoning code doesn't allow them those communications. So the zoning code creates a difficulty in them using their property for a permitted use, in a reasonable way. And you certainly within your authority to put restrictions on what the variance is. But in my view, there's absolutely a good case to be made regarding practical difficulty here, just based on type of user that they are and the need to be able to communicate in ways that are different than residences do.
But that practical difficulty could be solved by a alternative means. It does not have to be an electronic sign. So allowing signage in that, there is an alternative to this that does not have to make the sign be a changeable digital copy sign.
I don't know if there is or there isn't. I mean, they've had multiple signs, and one of the conditions of the variance that I'd heard was they would be eliminated. That was the word clutter used. I don't want to go back to that term. I certainly don't want to initiate that.
No.
I guess the one thing I would just try to reach a compromise on is if you could remove the word black background. If you said single color background, single color font, at least give some ability to give us to go back and replan maybe and down, and because we're paying way too much for this sign to, that would fit within that. And we want to abide with what you laid out with us. But if somehow you could remove that black background and just say single color background with a second color font, rather than just saying black background. I wonder if we have any
Why don't you leave that with us to think about?
Okay.
I prefer to think about that because I want to look at examples. And part of the issue with that is, again, the bad guy here is the sign at Lander Circle, right? When it's bright white, it's at its worst from a distraction and traffic.
Gotcha.
With a black background and letters, minimizes the distraction, minimize the light pollution. That's part of the driver for this. And so if it's white with red letters, it just is.
Because
It's more.
I thought the same thing. My first thought was, well, it'd be beautiful to match your building with a white sign and then put the font could be black or a color. But I have the same fear that it'd be a very glaring, illuminated white that could be a danger. That's a concern. And I don't know if we see signs like that. Maybe that's why.
I'd have to look at examples.
Okay, let me ask, given that back and forth I just heard, do you want to, and I don't know what your timetables are, do you want to marinate on this for a month and we will not decide this tonight? I leave it to council. I'm just throwing it out there. Or else we should take a vote.
Well, I would move forward on the conditions I set forth, and then we could think about other conditions or your request, like subsequently, or we can, but I don't know if that, my fellow council members feel that way or not, so
As I said, I'm troubled by the slippery slope, and I'm still troubled even with Mr. Byron's explanation of the practical difficulty. I'm still troubled by that. Emmy brought up a good point that there are other ways to solve it besides this sign, which is not permitted in the U1 district, which if we allow it, then we're further down the slippery slope. So for those reasons, I would think that maybe somebody could bring something else up that would change my mind, but I'm really troubled by this, and it has nothing at all to do with the church. It's just.
Is there a way so we're not in emergency mode. We imagine that this might take most of the summer.
I think government moves slowly.
Even hearing some of your feedback today, And knowing that ABR is involved at some point, is there any way to meet with that group and then come back here? Would that be an advantage at all, or is, we're not able to do that because we haven't been approved a variance?
They're not going to be able to approve anything because of the electronic variance requirement. They can look at the shape.
No, that's what I'm talking about, just making sure we have all
But
the,
it's going to be.
all the moving parts
That's all going
together.
to be preliminary. They could give you that sort of preliminary idea, but
If
they're
that's
not going to be
needed, I'm
able
just
to
trying to
rule
think of
upon it.
another railroad track to start, maybe, so that we'll table the whole thing.
I mean, getting their feedback on a preliminary basis, I think would be helpful if they're, I don't know the process, Rick, could they have an advisory opinion from ABR?
We can,
Just a small working session.
the city wants to work with you, and I will take it up with ABR that they at least give you some reaction to it. Okay, how's that?
Yeah, just before we get off this topic, Steve, I'm a little bit troubled by your explanation of practical difficulty here. And individual need to do something is not a practical difficulty.
No.
It has to be a condition of the property that's unique to that. And I understand we have other issues because of the history in the community.
But it's a non-conforming use. And the usage of the property under that non-conforming use is what creates the practical difficulty in terms of communication. The city has seen the alternative. They could keep putting up a bunch of signs. This allows you to get down to one, and the changeable site allows them to change.
In my mind, that is not practical difficulty because they're entitled to communicate, not entitled to the most effective communication that they would wish to have. And that's not practical difficulty, is individual desires to use my property in a way that I want to, despite what the zoning code says. Practical difficulty in my mind is driven by, here's unique circumstances because of topography or something of that sort that says, I would be permitted to do this, but my lot is unique in its condition and character. So that uniqueness is preventing me from building the house that I could otherwise build on a square lot.
I understand what you're saying. I think you have the authority to find that the usage of the property, the non-conforming usage of the property, and the need to communicate programming for that usage creates a practical difficulty in terms of having multiple signs, multiple messages, multiple programs going simultaneously. We have that authority. You don't have to, if you don't want to.
But that's a different question than whether they have a right to that. Okay.
So if we table
The court
this,
could find otherwise too.
Let's
we table this until another meeting in May, maybe? Is that, it gives you a chance to discuss it, or is that
It
not?
may give you a chance to consider your application also and think about, is what being proposed here even worthwhile for you, things like that. So if council doesn't object, I don't have a problem with tabling this to next.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, fine.
Okay?
Thank you for your time and thank you for your patience.
Thanks for coming.
Excited to be talking about.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
And
So this would not have come to council but for our new ordinance, right?
Correct.
Right.
And it passed the planning commission 4-1.
Yep.
Everything passes the planning commission.
Okay. Does anyone need a
Can I
3-minute
just,
break or anything?
do we, just a question just to make it clear for the record that council's review of this application is ongoing and continuing?
Yes.
It is not complete tonight. Do we need a motion on that, Steve, or something to affirm?
If the chair tables without objection, it's tabled. If you want to take a motion to table it, that works too.
Okay.
All right. Does
The
anyone-
chair is tabling it?
Chair is table.
Okay.
Chair has to.
Okay.
We're going to take a 3-minute break? 3 minutes long enough for you, Mr.
If I get down there first.
All right, well, get down there, move, man.
3-minute break.
It's yours.
Did you take it?
Why'd you take it? It was sitting here. Why'd you take
I'm
We're
not
looking for yours.
Oh, it's okay. I started coughing
I
too.
feel like I
I think I need to stand up for a second.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. It's in my calendar. Typically go to those. Though the crowd is getting younger and younger, I'm getting older and older.
crazy, but I got it together.
It makes me sad that I don't play.
I could have played out like.
I just feel like that's just like
Oh,
oh my God, people really get tight.
Yeah.
I love it.
I do too.
Like, like usually I'll be like, does anybody want anything? And everyone's like, yeah, that's okay. Oh, they're like, yes.
Well, because they can get your nuts.
Well, and also because like they just want food. Because if you look in like my one nephew's refrigerator, it's literally beer and like.
This is what?
Can't shut off the
That's his entire refrigerator.
Pickles and mustard, like.
I don't even know if that's that. His fruit, like your fruit and vegetable, it's just protein bars. It's full.
Your turn.
The weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Sheila,
So
let me turn that up.
he has essentially no food.
We're giving out swag to everybody who stuck around.
Oh, it just pauses it.
Yeah, but these are different.
It's a nicer box that it's in than the last time you brought them out, Mayor. I like this.
It's fancier.
So this goes to this, though, right?
Yeah, but
I have
we have
a stack of
a
those.
the recording on that.
They used to be on your.
So we're using this.
You'd have an
and you-
inbox and.
Oh, yeah. It's a great display. What a great way to.
Oh, is that right? I didn't realize. So there's this recording here and a recording
Yeah,
here.
and, yeah, and
Ah.
Okay.
It's a nice little box.
It was very self-serving this evening because I can't see through my glasses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I can't.
Huh?
I'm not contagious, by the way.
You want a thing?
Sure, I'll take one.
Can always use a thing. Can never have enough.
Enough thing.
For my readers that are like.
The best ones are the Picasso. The lens cleaning glasses that came out of Picasso. You were impregnated with something.
Oh, really?
And they just, and it's like cloth.
Oh, the
And they
cloth.
just make the glasses.
I thought you meant the glasses. I just buy these on Amazon. They're just readers, but I can't see without them.
1 hour and 30 minutes.
The guy there looked suspiciously but kindly at me. Because every time I go to Costco, I say, hey, Rich.
Cleaning glasses, they're nice. These are nice.
Yeah, or do you want to leave it noon?
Which what is it? I just know our orientation. Oh, okay. Okay.
So we were trying to work between the residents and the signs, so we said you could put the signs. You're ranking that plan.
See, I just know I just know that the school board's position at the time was basically, you're gonna do what they tell us to do. That was our position. We were not,
We had a lot of complaints.
and we were not, I mean, I didn't want to say it here. We wanted to be good neighbors.
We also
And
had the library. So
I know.
we let the school do that, the library's gonna let them do that. How can we-
But just so you know, the school board, maybe, who knows, I don't know what, was it Ed? I don't know what Ed wanted at the time, the superintendent. But the school board did not want,
They wanted graphics, they wanted footballs thrown.
well, we did not want that. We did not want that, and the school board, we didn't want to pay for it, to be honest with you. And we wanted to be good neighbors, just like the school board, the majority of the school board did not want the scoreboard that some people wanted.
Well, that was part of it.
We said, we don't want to, we pulled as a group, we pulled the ordinance, and we were like, that ordinance says that, we're not,
And then that was the other thing, where we had to go by, go by and try to make everything.
we.
There's two my best talkers.
That's why.
Number one.
Uh-huh.
Coffee? Nah.
That's right. That's bizarre. Well, see, this is what's been going on. Everything, I'll tell you, this is just, it's just happenstance, my good fortune that this is, up here, because. Yeah.
The guy that's presenting it.
Well, to me, to me, that's just the way it is, and you're right, those get put up occasionally as opposed to. Probably.
It's also hot. But it is.
I hope they know, Cindy.
Long form.
I hope they get that.
His answer was.
I mean,
What is it?
Oh, gotcha.
Driven by all the cases, really deep.
It's not my.
It's an interesting question.
All the cases say.
I already blew it away.
Land slopes. When you talk about environment, it's know about your backyard goes like this.
All right, if everyone would settle down, we're gonna recommence.
So
Thank you.
can't do a flat. So there's a.
We are back in session.
All right.
So good.
37.
Our next agenda item
See.
is a resolution that we've been requested by the county to accept the Cuyahoga County's 911 plan. You've received the informational from the county as to the packets. Steve or Chief Frazier, you have anything more on this, or it's all in the packet?
I think it's pretty much, you can kind of dive into it, but it's basically administratively to administer the 911 program. There's state funding that's pushed down. So this becomes a committee that establishes that in each county and how that money is distributed to the PSAPs. And how it's funded. So every PSAP has components that are reported funding from the county in addition to funding from individual communities. So this committee decides administratively at all levels how that's handled.
But this is the same 911 program they have. There's not a new program here. This is just funding related, or is there
Correct.
something
This actually goes back to about 1985.
pure funding? It's not doing something different.
Correct.
Right, okay.
And there's actually a second component to this that we'll talk about in a minute. But for the immediate, if we could deal with Resolution 2024-14, that would be great. Could we have a motion regarding that?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrox?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Fodor?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong? Yes.
Great. We then move on to Resolution 2024-15. This votes for a mayoral representative on the 911 program review committee. This is actually different than it's been handled before. There's always been this review committee, just so council knows. This conversation that I'm having with you is going on all over Cuyahoga County in every council chamber because none of us have had to do this before. Typically, the Mayors and City Managers Association nominated a mayor representative to be on this. In the past, it was Jack Ruby. Mayor Ruby is retired, and the Mayor Gale from Euclid is going to be that representative now. But it's either the county who then says it's really the state is requiring the individual communities to together nominate that mayor representative. So wow, that's why you see see Mayor Kirsten Holzheimer Gale as the nominated representative. I fully support
Did you bring
Mayor Gale in this
her
effort.
resume and background for
Yeah.
council review?
And I appreciate Mayor Gale's commitment to doing this. I understand Mayor Ruby actually provided a lot of training and information to her in preparation of her assuming this role on the 911 committee. So she's all set to go. So if we could have a motion.
I have
for that?
one, I
Yeah,
just have
of
one
course.
quick question. I noticed in the review program, which I'm assuming this is when we should talk about this, that we were one of the only communities that had 2 people listed. You were listed mayor, as was Becky. And I didn't see that reflected in other communities. So I didn't know if that was a type,
Well, Mayor Becky actually is not voting on this, but that would be a ministerial
okay,
quirk that in producing the document, whoever produced the document.
added her as a
Becky rece-
co-mayor?
Becky receives copies to me of anything. So that I
Gotcha.
don't miss it.
I-
So they just
okay.
picked her up for some reason in that list.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that she hadn't taken on an additional role or something that we were unaware of. And
No.
and speaking, I personally know Kirsten Holzheimer Gale, and I think she will be a fabulous person. to
She's a
do this.
wonderful
She is a great-
individual and mayor.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zatra?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godus?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Great. We will move on then to ordinance 2024-17.
16.
Things are moving so much.
Resolution
16.
Oh,
16.
resolution 2024-16. I put an extra check mark on my page.
Glad you didn't get mine too.
Expressing the sense of council that the city should proceed with the sanitary sewer improvements. I think we've had the sewer stuff here and available for anyone who wanted to see it. I don't know if anyone did, but we're up to that time when we have to.
This is actually for giving you permission to apply for MCIP funding for
Next year.
future projects.
Right.
This is the next phase.
The
You
next
talked about
phase.
it the last
Right,
meeting.
right.
Wait, is this for the next phase or indefinite?
No, this is for the next phase. My error in expressing that.
And MCIP stands for,
Member Community Infrastructure Program, I believe.
thank you, Don.
That is the name of the grant program
Okay.
of regional.
Oh, okay. Is that different than the Northeast?
It's
What if
the
we have applied for in the past, I guess is
Yes,
what I.
this is that program.
This is
same
the same.
program. They have a couple of different pools of money
Okay.
to help fund improvements, and this comes out of a specific pot of funds that they provide through this process every year.
Thank you.
Do we know what street this is?
We're looking at this, what we call the southwest quadrant, which is south of Shaker, west of Lander on the map. It's South Woodland, Kersdale, Bremerton, Bolingbrook. That is that whole area. So it is likely to be South Woodland, but we're working with the Board of Health to define the areas. It could be a number of streets.
I was just curious, when the last kind of community-wide communication went out regarding our kind of sewer strategy and plan, because this may be a great opportunity for us to just, for the city to do a little extra outreach and just kind of remind everybody, hey, this is where we're going with sewers. This is our intent, we're seeking additional grants, Mayor. Like, especially, we hear new residents have moved in, changes in the community that it may just be an opportunity to continue that communication and discussion if you so.
It's been
saw
a few
fit.
years now. There's absolutely no problem with.
Yeah, I think just a
keeping
general
people
outreach would be,
Updated about it, that would be fine. And I'm
yeah, for
happy,
transparency.
I'm
it's-
happy to push that messaging out.
Thank you, especially with this being a resolution and like us just kind of
Mhm.
putting it through quickly. I think for transparency's sake, it might be really
You could, even a
Positive.
short article in Pepper Pike Post that said, next phase of the sewer project is anticipated in this area, just so people know it's coming. and-
Right, not a problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Would it be appropriate to do 2 readings so that this is the first reading so that the community knows about it and then come back at the next meeting just so we can not rush it because it's not really an emergency.
Well, it's a resolution, not an ordinance, but, you know,
We talked about it last
That's
week
okay.
too, right?
that's okay. Pardon?
Don mentioned it
about it
last week.
We talked about it last
I
time.
mean, I could go either
This
way.
is the second time we've talked about it.
I just had one question that
Yeah.
doesn't relate, it relates just to sewers, but Mr. Lemay asked about some change of language in an ordinance that we passed last time, and.
We're gonna get to that
we were
next.
No, no,
Oh.
no. This was the language that they wanted to run by the bond council.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I just wondered where that came
I'm
out.
sorry, we're off topic and I'm not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's about sewers.
Let's hold it to,
It's about sewers.
it's about sewers.
Yeah, and there was language in the
Right.
ordinance that.
Oh, yes,
um,
okay.
Calfee,
All right, let's do this and then I'll address your question.
Okay.
I have a question. In the first page, it says that whereas such sewer improvements shall be identified, scheduled, and designed in accordance with the city's sewer plan. Do we have that available at City Hall for residents to view the city's sewer plan?
Yeah,
Right.
we've provided that in the past, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the residents can come and look at the maps, or we can have it available to them.
Sure.
is that something we could put on the website?
maybe in that same little blurb
Yeah.
about,
Like a link.
It's like a big map.
It's a
Oh,
big map.
it's a
I
map.
have one, yeah.
It's a big map.
It's just a big map, okay. It's not,
But there's like
By the
a,
time it reduced down to that
It's not
size.
text.
I
it
think,
was-
no, no, no,
maybe
just
just
that
the-
it's available
just
to see it.
It's available,
No,
yeah.
but I'm saying in the blurb, we could say, and if anybody wanted.
Oh, yeah, I can include that.
but
Yeah.
also Don has a
In the
really nice
map.
overview map of like the blues and the different roads that don't have sewer on it
Well,
yet.
I'll make mention that the map is available.
That might be something at one point for us to go over again, though, where we stand. I know you've talked about it, Don, but like a visual, I don't know if we have anything. I know we can't
Like
put it on a little piece of paper. You won't be able to read it.
But like that map and just
Yeah, it's a
has a
big map.
nice one. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Regarding 2024-16, anything else? Can we have a motion?
so moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrac?
Yes.
Ms. Waldman?
Yes.
Ms. Bodek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
To, out of order here, not on the agenda, but to Tony's question, which I think related back to, I did speak to Mike Sharp about it
Mhm.
immediately, and he said, no, that language is that language, and it's,
Because,
I'm not, he didn't find it ambiguous at all. He says that, I have to go back to my thoughts. I'm sorry, you caught me flat here.
yeah, no,
I'm sorry.
I did
But
deal
thanks
with
for
him
calling out.
immediately about it.
Yeah.
And resolved it with him, but I can't articulate it sitting here right
Okay.
now. I'll get to you about it. I have to refresh
All
myself.
right. Okay.
Okay? Next, ordinance 2024-17. This relates to, was it just last week? Last week's overriding of the veto and the subsequent passage of the, is it 14?
13.
13. And I'll let Steve explain it.
Sure. That there is no inconsistency between the first ordinance that created the Charter Review Commission, the second ordinance that created the Charter Review Commission, that would prevent both ordinances from going into operation. So technically, you should be forming two Charter Review Commissions now, because You have two different ordinances that create a charter review commission.
Isn't the sentence that was removed? And since there's a new section describing the council's engagement in this as only being liaisons rather than co-chairs,
No, you could
is
have,
that inconsistent?
no, it's not. You could have a commission where you're the chairs, non-voting chairs, and you could have a commission where you're liaisons. They aren't necessarily inconsistent. So my recommendation is to just delete it so that, or repeal it so that it's clear.
Why not?
It's administrative, basically.
It's
We're looking at.
housekeeping, absolutely.
I'll move it.
This is moving to
This is suspend.
I'll move it.
Second.
Hold on, a little slow.
Was there a second?
Are we all good with that? No discussion?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
think our
13
intention is to have.
Okay, that's-
was
I
to
just
have
wanted to
the
make sure.
Second one, but just to make sure, I think it's fair.
But the 13's been signed, it's in effect, and
Let's
Yes,
do
it is.
Let's do
Okay.
it.
Yes, what this would be doing
it's just
is
deleting.
repealing the ordinance that was vetoed, that was overridden. And then the subsequent ordinance was, so this is repealing the overridden ordinance.
It's specifically repealing that and
Yes, it is.
because the 13 was defective in doing that.
Yes, and that's why it
I
recites.
want to tell everybody that 13 was reviewed by our law director and he told me that it would be effective. So it wasn't on me.
It is effective. You didn't ask me if it would repeal 04. That's a different question, isn't it?
I thought you should anticipate that question.
Well, I missed it.
You are the law director.
I missed it.
All right. Yeah,
Like I said, it's
this is
not
a
on
roll,
me. Not
let's
on
have a
me.
roll
It's on you.
call.
You wrote it.
Let's have a roll call on the suspension.
Ms. Atrac?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
All right, and a motion to adopt ordinance 2024-17.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrac?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
All right. Next, we have, which I'm sure will be a 3-minute conversation, a discussion of the Charter Review Commission, information packets and how the program is going to be introduced and promoted.
Just one or two?
Yeah, no, keep passing.
So, when we did the last summer's program, I know there were letters that were worked on collegially and collectively by council.
The first document that you got is the process statement. And we changed 4, 5, and 6 to be more specific as to the process for selecting the members of the commission. And I think it works. Maybe you'd want to read through those and see if there are any questions. I guess 3 changed too, because I had to keep moving the date of when the request by email would happen.
We're not putting this in any kind of resolution or ordinance. And the
No.
reason I ask for that is because all these dates may move, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
This is their guide.
So this is just a general guidelines.
Guidelines.
How this should lay out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like the number 3 to happen though, because we should get get stuff out into the hands of the residents so that they can apply for the commission.
And that would include these 2 documents along with the enclosures
If you read
listed.
the letter,
Yeah.
it tells you what documents are going with.
All right, hold on, I haven't gone through the process, I haven't gone through the letter.
Just answering Jackie's question.
we ever get a new council meeting date?
There's going to be a meeting in December, right? We don't know what the date will be. As long as we get it done by December. I think that's what we need to be worried about.
Just a question about the December, the fourth Wednesday of the month council meeting. Have we given any thought about when that might be rescheduled to? If we're,
Well, I think that the mayor said that they'd be able to give us that date around the middle of the year.
okay.
That they needed to, I don't know exactly the reason, but I
Okay.
think it's talked about June as being
Okay.
when that date could be known.
I don't know if we have any flexibility on this May 22nd date. I hate to say this in a public meeting.
Unfortunately,
It's Harvard graduation. I
yeah,
won't be there.
unfortunately, to get the private,
I will not be there. I will be at my son's graduation.
yeah.
It's a once in a lifetime event.
Proudly.
I will probably be there, so I will not be able to be there.
Well, I
can't
still
believe I
regard this
said
as
that
an
in a public
aggressive
meeting.
timeframe to get this done.
Mhm.
And
Tell anybody that I'm out of town.
I think the proof of the pudding will be whether we get the statements of interest back from residents by May 15th.
And it's your intention to have a special election in 2025?
Or an election in 2025.
Well, if it's March, I mean, there's no March election in 2025.
Apparently, there's a
We believe
school board
There
issue.
may be.
It may be
a-
in May.
No, Steve, there's a potential of a, oh my gosh, what is the word I'm looking for?
Is there a school?
Rec,
A wreck.
a rec levy.
Well, that would be in May.
Well, the 17
Okay.
is March or May of 2020.
It wouldn't be March. March is only for primaries in presidential years.
Okay.
Okay.
We would just piggyback onto theirs.
Split the cost, but that,
Yeah.
Well, if we-
That would be nice if
So-
it was May. It would just
To kind
If
of,
we decide we want to do a special election in March, we could. Right?
we could.
I'm not sure that's right.
Okay.
Board of Elections may not be an option.
Okay.
Well, May is fine too, though. It really is not. We can address that in a year.
Yeah.
Should we give applicants a little bit more time to apply? Like
Well,
a
let's,
month or?
let's do that if we have to.
Okay.
There's no real interview period that you've built into this.
I have not.
Well, there may be people who nobody knows.
And I agree with you. We may have to, depending on what the applicant pool looks like, that may be something we have to do. And depending on the other applicants
Mm-hmm.
and how level of the quality and capabilities of
Right.
what we get. So I agree.
Right.
Is it realistic to get this stuff out this week?
I assume, Mayor, you can let me
This
know
week,
who I
like
would,
tomorrow?
let me know who I would work
Oh,
with.
today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday, who I would work with to get at least the email going, and I have information about the mailing.
Okay, well, you share the mailing information because we want to compare that stuff. But
I'll give you the
at
number.
this point, what the administration needs is this sort of thing from council so that, the administration team will then handle getting the mailing put together, dealt with the vendor, pushing the emails out. It's not really, respectfully, it's not really the role of the committee, the commission liaisons or anyone else. This is now a city ordinance that we will need to handle administratively and get this thing taken care of. One thing that's missing
My
from
only
this
point is I
also,
have the documents.
say again,
I have the documents and they're ready to go into
what documents?
the documents that are going to go with the cover letter.
Oh.
The charter, the statement of process, and the application form.
We gonna see those and talk about them?
We already,
Do you have the?
we already
do we have
looked at the
application?
application form. And there were, and everybody approved it. The statement of process you're looking at right now, the charter is the charter, and there's the cover letter.
Okay, we'll make sure that we have it all, that's all. The,
I
the
wanna
other
make sure
thing
I
that's
know how to
missing
do
from
that and
this,
who to do it with.
the other thing that's missing from this process is there's on your, in your June 12th meeting, there should be there needs to be an organizational meeting of the commission itself where they elect their chair.
That
Would
would
that
happen,
happen at June 12th?
that would happen then, June 12th.
Okay, it should say that.
Yeah, we can read the organizational
agree.
meeting.
And on the, I would suggest that on the number 8, the committee meetings, I really believe that these things should be, the meetings, these committees should be offset so that they won't compete with each other so far as attendance.
Right, that's a detail.
Yeah, well, maybe that should be set out so that
I don't
the
want to,
people know that there's not a conflict.
I don't want to slow this down if we don't have to. I mean, I
I'm
think
not trying to
that's
slow it down. I'm
that's a
just
detail.
trying to have a pretty important detail, Tony.
I think it kind of goes without saying, but
Well, I just said it
You're
and it
changing
wasn't in
something
there.
else, so it doesn't matter. It just,
I just passed on to council also a comment from Mr. Newell, who'll be with us again next month. He does not understand really the scoring business or think it's necessarily set out. This is set out a little differently than I've seen it before, isn't it, Tony?
I did change it because of the questions that were raised at the last meeting.
Right. So let me understand what you have here now. It's saying each council member and mayor will give a score of 1 to their most preferred, 2 the second, on and on. And these candidates, until every applicant has been ranked.
Correct.
So if there are 20 applicants, there'll be 20 rankings.
1 through 20.
Okay.
Right.
And then you have in number 6, after the tally of the top 12, the full council will then choose 9 of those 12. So you'll go outside of the ranking necessarily at that point.
We could.
Choose,
We could.
okay. Has that been agreed? Is everyone already on board? I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, I missed that when you think about that. So kind of the first ranking is to make sure they're all qualified, they're, right? Is that how you're thinking about it? So,
I think if we rank them from 1 through whatever the number is with our favorite as number 1, that there should be enough qualified candidates within the first 9 or 12 numbers.
Okay, is there a reason to cut it off at 12 as opposed to 15, let's say? I'm just asking, I'm inquiring.
We could cut it off at 9. I think that 12 was when we talked alternates. So maybe that's could change to 9. What does everybody think?
Well, I think if we're presenting 12 and then only 9 are being chosen, do we want to do that?
I feel like step
Or
6
do we
is
just
almost
take the 9?
redundant.
I'm sorry?
To me, step 6 almost seems redundant, where we're meeting, we're discussing, if I know someone really well, I'm gonna pitch them to you guys and vice versa. And then we rank. Why don't we just choose 9 and move on? I'm trying to figure out what that step 6 would accomplish that wouldn't be accomplished in step 5.
Well, we have to tally the rankings that are given to us
Right, and
at the
then,
May 22nd.
yeah, top 9, done.
We're going to have 8 votes and maybe 20 people. We're going to have to put those into a spreadsheet.
No, the ranking, you take the lowest 9 ranks.
How do we know who the lowest 9 are? We need to put
Well, yeah,
everybody's vote into a spreadsheet.
right, but that doesn't, it's purely numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
But that can't happen
At the same
on the
time.
22nd.
You have to vote on the results.
Okay.
So, I'm not quite tracking, Jackie. So you're saying, so you do all that under step 5, and the end product
Mhm.
is the spreadsheet with the numbers.
Right.
Council liaison tally present.
So it's almost like a,
You
I want to
just-
say like rubber stamp, but you're saying like, okay, here are the 9 people with the lowest scores.
No,
No.
no, on the 22nd,
Yeah.
everybody's going to give the liaisons
Mhm.
their rankings.
Mhm.
And we're going to put those 20 people into a spreadsheet, and whoever comes out with the lowest number,
Mhm.
and that'll take, some time.
Mhm.
The 22nd is a council meeting day,
Mhm.
right? 29th is. So it won't take that long, but it can't happen at the meeting where we
Okay.
can put that spreadsheet together.
Okay.
And then we'll present.
Assuming we have 160 votes to,
So just order of go here on number 5.
Mhm.
That's Harvard.
So do you want, when we have the executive session, no one's done their formal final rankings? Because the point of the executive session is
To get information.
to
yeah.
discuss all the candidates.
at the end of the meeting is when. that
Right,
would
so
happen.
because the way this is ordered, I would put
Oh, move that last sentence
up.
Yeah.
So it's clear that
Okay.
they
Move
make
up
it the
to
second
the second,
sentence.
second,
Right.
second sentence, okay.
Can we say submit by the 22nd, our rankings?
No,
Yeah, no.
well, you can submit them ahead of time.
That's what I mean, can I submit?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
like knowing that somebody isn't going to be there, that
So
would not provide their rankings.
Yes.
Is
No.
there a way
Is there-
for us to?
Is there a problem with the person not being at that meeting and providing the rankings ahead of time? Steve?
You're supposed to be, you're supposed to be conducting all proceedings in an open meeting of council.
Even if those rankings were happening those rankings have to happen in public. That would not be an executive session.
The final vote has to happen in public. The point of the executive session is to exchange
You
views
have
on candidates.
deliberations, you can have conversations in executive session.
We may
but you
not
can't vote.
vote.
Is there a day that week that you could be at a meeting?
That's, Harvard graduation is at like 9 a.m. I have to be in line at 6:45.
No, I mean,
Next morning.
could we have the meeting on the 20th, for example, move that
Yeah. I
special
could be there.
meeting?
I could be there. I mean, I hate to be
Yeah.
specific
Yeah.
to me. I can't miss his graduation. I wouldn't.
My son's graduation that day.
The
Is that the
20th?
20th?
Well, it's the Sunday before, but we're coming
Oh.
back.
Okay.
How about the 21st? This is
Yeah,
the Tuesday.
I'm,
Well,
Yeah.
Jim, when are these, if necessary, interviews happening?
See,
I don't see
would-
where this is happening.
So I would think that after this meeting in which we discuss the candidates, and there's maybe 2 candidates that have fantastic resumes, but no one's met them and they haven't been involved, but the paper documents look good. It strikes me that you would want someone on the council or 2 members of the council would want to talk to them to get a sense of so that would.
Or all of those, as many as.
Or all, how many, yeah. But yeah, I would think that.
What we want to do is avoid this being an insider's game. Anyone being able to accuse us of being an
No,
insider.
absolutely. No, everyone should get fair consideration. Now, I mean, if we have a whole passel of highly qualified candidates that all of us know,
Right.
that, but there may be very likely a case where someone who
I'm
has,
assuming they're going to be people we don't know.
that none of us know,
Right.
that have great on paper experience that would want to investigate whether, they have a right skill set and commitment to be on it. So I agree with you. I think we should probably build a block into that. I like having the candidates. I like the executive session where we exchange our views. And then coming out of that, some flexibility about potential that we would interview candidates to get a sense of them if none of us know them.
All right, let's push December of 2024 to January of 2025. And provide for the interviews and have the event that was happening on the 22nd happen on the 29th when everybody can be here.
Thank you, everybody. I
And then we
appreciate
can
it.
slide in the interview process into early June. Does that work?
Yeah. And I would just, and put a sentence as needed, the council will arrange for as needed interviews for prospective applicants.
So we
Well-
could have the applications due May 22nd too.
Yeah,
right?
right. We can
And I
move that.
think
to May
respectfully,
22nd.
like us making sure that this process really goes well, considering if we were to do additional charter reviews, that there's a model for other councils to work off of.
Yeah, well,
Like
there's going to be a model plus the
Right.
adjustments that we make after. we
Right,
get-
right with it, but it's like I appreciate the thoughtfulness and Tony changing this
All the
up.
work,
I think it's good. Yeah.
But if we do have to do that, then there has to be another executive session where we discuss the results of the interviews. So we need to build that into.
A second executive session,
Right.
yeah, after the interviews, right?
And then only after that would we have the data we need to do a ranking that based on now, all the conversation, including the interviews, here's the ranking. And then we get,
We have Juneteenth.
and then do we want to just, is that picking the top 9?
Yeah.
And that's it?
Yeah.
I don't relish that we picked 12 and only.
I think that's a leftover from when we talked about having
Okay, all right,
alternates, and
yeah.
maybe that
All
just
right.
didn't
Yeah,
get
that's
changed.
fine.
Just pick
Because we
9.
talked about that if one person for some reason had to drop off, it wouldn't be a problem.
Right, but then we could just go to
The list.
to our spreadsheet and select from that group.
Yeah.
Maybe number
Maybe.
10.
Or, yeah.
We'd inquire, yep.
So we're ranking 9 or 12?
9.
9. Well, no, the top 9, we're ranking everybody that applies. From 1 to 20 or 1 to
Oh.
whatever, so
Okay.
that,
Got it.
so that there's,
Ultimately, the
there's
top
nobody
nine
that,
be the
you know,
Rank
'cause we're-
everybody
because,
and take the
because
top 9.
the lowest,
That's great.
the lowest
Mandatory.
score,
Okay.
the lowest overall
Yeah.
score
Got it.
is our first number 1 candidate.
Okay.
But my question is, how will we still be able to get this out this month? What, do we have to have everybody see this again? Because if we do, then we're at May 22nd, because that's when our next meeting is.
Oh,
And then we're another month further out.
I don't feel strongly about this. I think this is a guideline.
Yeah.
We can adjust as we need to be. It's not a binding ordinance.
I think
or-
maybe even a little like all dates subject to change type, or like, dates are meant to be guidelines. Is there something?
That's at the
Says it at the
bottom.
bottom.
It's at the bottom.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
oh,
Okay.
exactly the words.
Maybe I can put an asterisk on that and
No,
put it
that's okay.
Put it
Literally
on-
just
put it
did
on-
it.
put it on process statement.
Bolded.
You're gonna have to adjust, do you have to adjust any of the dates in the letter?
No, I don't believe so.
Does the May 29th date still work?
Yeah, well, the June 12th will change. May 29th will change.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, so you can change the dates. It's the idea that this process letter goes out in the packet? Is that the idea?
Process letter goes out in the pack. You don't have to put it in there, I guess. We could do that at the next meeting, finalize that and not put it in the packet.
I think it would be really helpful for people who are thinking about applying to see.
How about if I
With
took
their
out the
commitment.
date? How about if I took out the dates?
And
in
just
the
said, here's
process
a
letter?
rough, like,
Here's the steps
I
that
like
we're gonna
that.
do.
Yeah, I was gonna
Maybe
suggest
not
that, like,
dates is
could we,
May, June.
or
Yeah.
yeah, like maybe a timeline by month, Tony. I don't want to wordsmith what you've done because I really appreciate the work you've
Well, I think we'll
put
keep-
into this.
Well, after I repair this,
Mhm.
we'll keep it with the dates, but what we send out, which we can send out hopefully this week still, is a statement of process that doesn't have dates on it.
And you
But
probably could
months.
have the final terminal date, like.
Yeah.
So that people know where we're going.
Where an
to.
ending point.
January 24th.
Or, yeah, and even for the, like
March,
initial
May.
meeting, June.
I like the idea of months, just
I think,
June.
yeah,
Yeah.
just like general.
June gives them a guidance,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
month, May. and that-
If
and-
they're available
it-
during that time.
Right, I don't want someone looking at dates and say, oh, I can't do that date, so I'm out.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'cause,
Yeah.
My son's wedding's blah, 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 so
As
I'm
they-
not gonna
As they
apply.
meet, the committee or the commission, they may want to adjust their own dates.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fair.
Yeah, so
That's why I thought,
I
you
think
know,
it's fair
there's
not
gonna,
to give them,
hopefully
Right.
there's gonna be committees of 3, and those folks can choose the dates that are best for all 3 of them to be able to get together and
So
and
putting
talk.
months makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Okay.
But yeah, and I like that there's the, it shows where we're aiming to finish, because then people have a.
Right.
A feeling for the process.
And Steve, would you check to see about March? Because we should take that out if that's not possible.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
I guess, how do we help Tony to be able to get this out on the timeline that he would like? What do we have to do tonight to
I don't-
get this
If I,
to?
if I take out the dates and just do the months and make the other adjustments we talked about to put in an interview process and slip the end date to January, the second last date to January of 2025. I think that statement can go out with this cover letter with the 2 dates changed and the charter.
When we did the sidewalk mailer, the walkway mailer, if I recall, we got a PDF to just do a quick view on. And it was like within X number of hours, and then it was good to go to the printer, just that there wasn't a glaring typo or anything like that on that. Would that make sense to do, or is that?
Well, the charter is the charter if it has typos in it.
Yeah, that would be fine.
So these are the only other 2 documents that
Okay,
go
so
with
it's
it.
just charter.
This
and-
cover letter
Okay,
and the state and the application form. You've all seen that. I can send it out again tomorrow. Oh, I can't send it out. I'll send it to Steve and he can send it.
Application, cover letter, yeah. I think this letter's good.
I like the letter, Tony.
Yeah, letter's
It's
pretty
very-
good.
It's very nicely
It's
written.
a nice,
The Secretary of State doesn't have a calendar for 2025 out yet.
Hmm.
So I'm falling back on the fact that there are May primaries if there is either a city has, like Parma has contested
Primary.
primaries.
I'm going to put in, take out the months, say 2025 charter amendments will be submitted to the electors of Pepper.
Good enough.
Nice.
So you've got an
Then we're
extra
covered.
is
Yeah.
Then we're covered.
on your letter.
yeah.
Mhm.
I think.
should we coordinate the mailing of the email
Yes, right.
with the vendor's posting of the letter so that it doesn't go out, distance itself? Make it somehow proximate to each other.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. the question.
Thinking about the vendor who's got to
Printing.
reproduce something, do the mailing. They don't act immediately necessarily. Even your guy, whoever it is that you want to recommend. Should we, if you can get all this, because they have to have the hard copy in hand.
I can talk to them tomorrow and say, how long will it take you to turn this around?
And ask them how much
How much what?
money.
Oh, I have that.
Okay.
I have that.
You've not
Now,
said
there's-
that, so I don't have that.
Hmm?
I don't have that.
Well, I was gonna tell you about it. Now, there's another question that we need to address. They have a way of sending it out called EDDM, which is every door direct mailing. So that means that every address in Pepper Pike will get one of these, but they won't have names on them.
Right.
But the envelope can say, important charter review information
Current
enclosed,
resident.
please open.
Right.
That's $36.35. because the postage on that is only 38 cents. That, however, takes 3 to 5 days to get in the hands of the resident from when it's mailed. If we go with first-class postage with names, that would be $6,300. So it's twice as much, not quite twice as much.
Every direct door mailers works very well. That's
Okay,
what,
but it's 3 to 5 days instead of 1 to 3
I think we
days.
could even do a couple email blasts.
Well, we
too.
could do an email.
Email
I'm
and
assuming
then-
we're going to do an email blast, which will hit 2,500 or so. Becky told me that even though we have 3,100 people on the email list, that not all of them are residents. So I don't know how many
There's
are
some-
not.
There's some businesses.
I don't know how many are
And I think
not.
there's duplication of households.
They're due, yes. So let's assume that it's,
Husband, wife.
we're going to hit 2,500 people, which is half the households maybe, with the email blast. I mean, it's a guess, total guesstimate.
When the city sent out that recycling, there was a postcard that went out when I was first on council that I did not receive when it, and I can't remember what I feel like it was a recycling one.
There was some.
And
There was some postcard.
it never came to me. Do we know how that was mailed? Was that the Every Door Direct or was it,
I think that was first class postcard.
was that? Okay.
So if we're
Welcome to the
comfortable
United
with,
States Postal Service.
if we're comfortable with EDDM and we've slipped the date when they have to come back, it's $3,600 from this vendor, might be different with another vendor. Postage is most of it, so I don't think the pricing is going to be much different. So it might be more on who can assure us that they will get it out.
Yeah,
I'm
that's why-
I'm leery of the vendor we used for the town halls.
But that was also hitting in or near elections. Were we already in an election cycle
No, it
at
was
that
before,
point?
it was before, I think.
So
Could
they
we
have
send
that-
the
they don't
email
have that
by,
excuse. Okay.
could we send the email by Friday or something?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
if everybody's willing to trust me
Then
to
people-
change, to fix this properly,
Or Sheila could send out something on
I'll fix
Thursday
it
and then,
and Jim could
you know,
proofread
then
it.
people can look at it over the weekend and contemplate. Want to apply.
I'm fine with you doing what we talked about. Again, it's a guideline for the process, so
Yeah.
I'm good with that. I think the letter's in good shape with a few little fixes.
Couple little fixes.
Yeah, it's a good-
Application
it's a
we looked
really
at last
good
time, I thought it was good. So, yeah.
Everybody said it was good. Nobody had a problem.
No, it's nice. And I like the font you used.
You like the font?
I like the font. I'm serious. It's really easy to read.
Read
Like
it.
it was like I appreciate the font you chose. I like
looks
it.
very clear. It's
What
very.
font did you choose, Tony?
So we
Arial.
know.
Ariel.
Arial.
Ariel, it
Like the mermaid.
translated really nicely.
Green
I'm
Ariel.
Comic Sans myself.
No,
I-
the A and the E are swapped,
Ah,
but I don't know which is which.
Okay, do we have a plan?
Yeah, we have a plan.
okay.
So who should I see in City Hall once I have this?
It's not seeing. You need to send this stuff. They need electronically.
Okay. They also need to have the,
Send it to Becky
okay,
and
And they
Becky will
need-
have to talk to me as to
they'll have the
what we're
plan.
doing. We need that because she needs to reach out to the other vendor.
Right.
And get a sense. This may be the best deal in the world. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I know that they're very timely, and I can find out tomorrow how long their turnaround time is.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of vendors that they look at.
Well, when I talked to Becky, she didn't recommend one that you've used.
I
in the
leave it-
past.
I
She
don't-
thought
I
that-
don't-
She thought that they weren't.
I don't live in that world, so
Yeah, well,
I take her advice about it.
okay.
Okay, moving on to committees. Jim, we had a finance committee meeting this morning.
Yes, we had a finance committee at 7 o'clock.
Was it still today?
Still today.
Shockingly.
You didn't bring snacks, Mr. Mayor? We took our time with Brian Carter, who's our representative, helps us manage the portfolio we have of savings that the city has accumulated. He's with Fifth Third Bank, And he manages our longer-term portfolio, which is up to 5 years of fixed income securities. We had a really good discussion about where interest rates are going and how he and Joe are working together to optimize the portfolio mix to take advantage of very high short-term rates today, which he thinks, I think most people think, are going to come down, and therefore shifting more of our cash to longer-term investments to take advantage of the longer term of those investments. Rather than 90 days, it'll be 3 or 4 years. Then over the long term, that will pay a higher interest income to us as rates come down. So it was a great discussion. Thanks for arranging that. A lot of confidence in you and Brian working on that and how you're evolving our holdings to optimize that situation. So that was the bulk of our meeting. And other than that, Joe had nothing unusual or quirky to report. And our finances, my review of them, were still in really good shape financially. No other issues to report.
Thank you. Department heads, anything to report? Okay. Not a lot on my end. I will let everyone know that plans for the Taste of Pepper Pike are well underway. We have, at this point, 7 new restaurants that are joining us this year. It's going to freshen our lineup. They're just outstanding restaurants. Places like Crew Uncorked is coming. Lo Szechuan, the wonderful new Chinese restaurant over at Pinecrest. So some really exciting new vendors are asking to participate. And Council, you have anything?
When will ticket sales happen for that, Mayor?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you mention when when those tickets will go on
It'll
sale?
go on sale in May. I don't know the date off the top of my
Okay,
head.
okay. I had
We're not
someone
there-
ask
We're not
today.
there yet.
Okay, cool.
Would we want to consider, I don't know if we've ever done it, holding tickets for residents or for a week or something like that? Because I know there were a few people, I think last year,
Unless you're at the last minute,
they're pretty available.
we make them
Okay.
available to residents.
Okay, I remember
Yeah.
chatter about do
Yeah,
you have
it's
tickets?
it's only
'Cause we
if
sold
someone
out,
shows
right?
up. We do not sell tickets at the door.
No, but we sold out last year.
Yeah, last year we reduced this, we were still coming out of COVID. We reduced the size of
Okay.
the tent. And so we had to limit it to make sure that the tent didn't get burst, but we're back to our big
Fair.
tent this year.
Okay,
And
wonderful.
hopefully we'll have a great
It's a
tournament.
great event.
Yeah, it is.
It's June 23rd, Sunday after Father's Day. Anything else, Council? Audience comments? Yes, Luann?
Luann Graham, 31437 Shaker. When will we get a letter or something that details how much this sewer project is going to cost us with everything?
From the city end?
City, county, because right now, I don't know that I've heard numbers bandied about at different meetings of, well, you're gonna owe this, you're gonna owe this.
How about the resident assessment?
All of the resident assessment, how much it's gonna cost for us to, with the county, I know there's different ones that we're gonna have to finance, or you can pay it off. There's all these different prices they keep throwing at us, or that we've heard about, but we have no one page where it says, okay, you're gonna have this, you're gonna have this, you're gonna have this.
Did we send out the assessment letter on Shaker Boulevard?
We did.
We did.
I didn't get one.
We
I
went
haven't
to every
received
parcel.
any.
Every
They were-
parcel received.
It's a fun mailing because the name on the front has to match the parcel in the
We will
letter.
make sure that you receive another
Yeah,
one tomorrow.
Because I've asked other people in Shaker, I said, have you gotten anything in writing? How much is it? And nope, haven't
Should
got
be
it.
certified too, right?
It was-
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't get any, I haven't had a
we will make
certified
sure that
letter
you got one tomorrow,
in
Luann.
years.
If you know anyone else who is like,
We're not gonna have the cost of the individual homeowners. So it won't be the total cost.
No, it's just the, that one amount.
What you're talking about is what we're pushing out from the city side. But each individual house is gonna have their own individual cost.
Luann's talking about Shaker 1. She's not talking about Shaker 2.
Right.
She's not asking about the contractors
not
building the
talking about the
lateral. It's just the,
contractors. Oh, she said
total
city.
cost.
No, just the
No, just
city's
the
assessment.
stuff from the county and from the city.
The tap-in
and-
Are you-
fee,
you're talking
the
about
special
Shaker 1 though.
assessment.
Your
Yeah,
project.
Whiskey Shaker one.
Yeah, she's not, she knows that her tie-in cost is a
I
separate
know my
contractor
client costs
issue.
are, my contractor,
Yeah.
it's an individual thing. But that leads me to another point. I don't know how Shaker got kind of singled out of these new county guidelines that we're almost having to have a house by house, where your sewer line is, and they're gonna have to come in and the contractor's gonna have to do dye runs to see what's tied in where.
And they did that.
And we
for-
now have all my contractor went to get the permit. And he said, I can't get the permits from the county. I said, why? And he goes, oh, they've got these different, the county has these guidelines now, they want your sewer line at where your footers are. And my house was built in 1940. There probably weren't any guidelines as to where the sewer line was. My sewer line, the clean out in my basement is about 4 foot from the floor.
Right. Didn't Don have a lot of
Yeah.
explanation and communication with you already, Luann? You're bringing it like we don't know. But Don
Yeah, but
talked to you about this, didn't he?
I wasn't at the last meeting.
Right, someone read your comments,
Yeah.
right.
And they said, yeah, we've got this all ironed out. I got an email from Dawn on Thursday. They just had the meeting on Thursday morning. My contractor still, he said, he got the guidelines. He says, I still can't get permits.
Okay, Don, why don't you bring us up to date as to
Yeah.
what's going on?
Well, here's what the county has standards that they had the same standards in place for Gates Mills Boulevard. What we found is they're based on lots of different contractors, different assumptions, different estimates that they were giving to residents. Some of them would show up at the county and try to pull a permit without proper information. So the county has their standard. For instance, their standard is that you're supposed to come underneath the footer with the new connection.
As if it was new
If
construction.
it was new construction or relatively new, that is what they would like to see. So the city has the ability to waive that requirement. What the county was trying to work out is make sure that there was a very good system in place where the city, our building department could say, yes, everything's correct in their basement. They do have their existing line going out the side wall of their basement, and we're going to allow them to connect there. So there's a variance essentially from what the county's normal requirements are to what the city's allowing for an individual contractor. This process allows our residents to hopefully save money and make smart decisions that will guide them through. We still have some houses out there that might have a sink or a shower or something in the basement that's tied in too low that may or may not be connected to the sanitary. We want to make sure we catch all those. The county has an obligation to make sure we catch all those.
Right.
So we put this, what seems like, what might seem like new rules. They're not new rules. We're just clarifying what's already in place and making sure that there's a clean process for a resident or a contractor to go to the city, get some guidance if they need to in terms of how they may need some relief from what the county standard is.
So the city is actually working for the benefit of the resident.
Correct.
By saying, we are not requiring people to be under their footer. They have a mid-wall discharge. We're good.
Right. All the plumbing works, will allow it. And
Right.
so the county wants us to sign off on that because they are not following their own standards. So we are providing them with something that's a little bit different than they would normally would require everybody to do. So what we don't want to do is say, hey, whatever the county says is fine. That means they're going to say our standard is this, and everybody's going to have this extra cost. We're trying to avoid that for the contractors. Some of them, this isn't a problem at all. Some of them, they might have some questions as we're working our way through it. There are some situations where it's not just the basement connection thing. There are some areas where they will allow an existing pipe that might be somewhat undersized to stay in place, even though their normal thing is to put a 6-inch pipe up to the house. They'll allow 4-inch in some areas. These different compromises or changes that they'll allow Pike to okay. But we have to okay them before the county can say, yeah, we're gonna let this permit go.
So
That's all it's-
so when the county is reacting to someone like, I don't know if it was Luann's contractor in particular, but
Right.
they're saying, make sure you've dealt with the city first so that the city has a sign off so
Exactly.
that we can issue our permit.
And we might need more information than what they normally would have gotten to make sure that we're gonna catch
Okay.
those. And it, again, 90% of the people, your connection, the way you described it, it's fine. There are a handful that they're trying to make sure that they don't have somebody illegally and inadvertently sometimes tie in something incorrectly. And all of a sudden they have an issue where a sink in the middle of their kitchen that was not tied in properly into the sanitary is going into the storm. So these things
Right.
do happen, and that's why they have this process.
Right, and often it's like maybe either the resident or someone before them having done a non-permitted
Right.
installation and they,
It could be 3 residents ago, right?
Right.
Sometimes these things have, or some of them exist when the house was built. And that could be in 1950.
okay. Let's say, cleaned up. Okay, thank you.
But we are working our way through it, and if there's any other questions, if your contractor has an issue, he can contact me directly or contact our office. We've talked to probably about a half a dozen of them over the past week or so.
Anyone else? We good? All right, we're adjourned.
I can't believe I said in a public meeting that I was gonna be out of town.
Too bad Carl Dietz isn't here. We can put him on a police watch. Wait, who's the?
I'm not so sure.
Oh, I'm at graduation. Yeah.
Standard Oil gas station. They wanted